It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast, we will have a college football week 4 scoreboard, along with everything you need to know from week 3 of the National Football League, plus fantasy football files and so much more. That's all coming your way next. Stay tuned.
Glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
Alrighty, back with you on another episode of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast. Yes, indeed, we're going strong here. Got my man Dan Dembski calling in from Blacksburg again. Dan, some more great news for you. Got on with ESPN Blacksburg. Can you tell us a little bit about that, sir?
Yeah, so I got connected with them last semester, and so I went in and just kind of asked Paul Van Wagner, who's the owner and operator and host of their main afternoon show called The Drive, and I talked to him and asked if he had an internship, and they said sure, and that's basically what it was. And now I'm covering volleyball for them this season. I'll be going to the home games and watching the away games too. And, making notes and stuff to do, segments on the radio on Monday. So I had one this past Monday. I just downloaded the MP3 for that. I'm going to put it on my social media. So, you can follow me on Twitter at DanTheVTMan97. I'll put it up there. And if you have me on Facebook, I'll put it on there as well. But I'm pretty excited, Josh, and it's cool to get both experience covering games and experience on the air, which I've already had, but I'm happy to have more of it.
Well, that's awesome, man. So glad for you. So welcome to the show again. We look forward to talking with you about sports in general and week 3 NFL football. But before we begin, the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast is part of the Mayo Please Podcast Network, www.mayoplease.com, and you can find them on SoundCloud and Twitter at the Mayo Please. We're sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's Food Line and Giant stores, and by PM Plus Reserves. And as always, thank you to JR Beats Official, MPT Now Productions, and Dave Johnson. Let's get right into it, Dan, with some college football talk. Virginia Tech had a bye week this week. So what were your thoughts on Virginia Tech having a bye week and some notable games you saw over the past weekend?
Well, Josh, we needed the bye week badly. We haven't played our best football so far this season, and I'm not going to say much more than that. We've just played sloppy football, and now begins the grind of our schedule. We have a game on Friday night, an ACC game against Duke, so we got to prepare for that. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. We just haven't played sharp football so far. We're not a good football team, and UVA and UNC on our side of the ACC have played extremely well, and minus that UNC loss, which we'll touch on, I'm sure. And yeah, that's basically what I have to say about Virginia Tech. Is we've got a lot of improvement to make between now and the end of the season, especially if we want to keep our UVA streak alive and our bowl streak alive as well.
Yeah, most definitely there. Hopefully they can prepare and come out these next couple of days with a couple of wins. So some other scores for you on the college football scoreboard week 4. Florida State got their second win over Louisville, 35-24. Appalachian upset 2-2 and North Carolina 34-31. Pitt upsets UCF
Big upset.
35-34. That
Yeah.
that one is a game changer. What are your thoughts on that upset, Dan?
I was shocked. I tuned into the end of the game, so I saw them pull it out. And it's good for the ACC, but it's also bad for our side of the conference because, again, they're another team we're competing with. And I'm already nervous about playing the other teams in general, but that's kind of a side note. But I was impressed with how Pitt played. They just were relentless. They weren't quitting, and that's really what college football is about, Josh. They also had a huge lead, and they had a 21-10 lead at the half, and UCF scored 21 points in the third, so they made it a good football game. But Pitt was able to shut them down in the fourth quarter, and just it goes to show you never know in college football, Josh, and you got to give Pitt a ton of credit. And now UCF fans can stop complaining about not being in the college football playoff. That's not going to happen this season, which makes me smile.
Yeah. And same thing with Appalachian and UNC, like sort of
Yeah.
makes the conference look bad.
It does. It does. That's quite an embarrassing loss, and especially because UNC was at home. You can't lose a game like that. And Appalachian State's a good football team in their conference, but they're not. They shouldn't be able to beat an ACC team on the road. It just shows you how weak the ACC is outside of Clemson, and I think I've said that on previous episodes. Yeah, but North Carolina, they've got a way to. The weird thing is, Josh, they were playing so well before that loss, and now it just looks like they're basically back to ground zero, which they're not. But it's a bad look for them. It's a bad look for the ACC, and they definitely have. I said Tech needs to improve, but they definitely need to improve after that loss at home.
Yeah, most definitely. And some other scores on the scoreboard. Close games for you. Texas over Oklahoma State, 36-30. UGA over Notre Dame in a close one,
That was a good game.
23-17. Any thoughts on that one?
I think that was the game we all expected to see. We expected to see I think we all expected to see a higher scoring football game. I know I did. The fact that, Georgia, who scores at will, only scored 23 is amazing. Ian Book's mistakes, I think, really costed Notre Dame those 2 interceptions, and Georgia took advantage. They won by less than a touchdown, so that's all it takes. But Jake Fromm played well, Josh. He only had 6 incomplete passes, and he added a touchdown pass. Not his best game by any stretch of the imagination, but Georgia is going to be a tough team to beat, and I think they're a college football playoff team just like they were a season ago. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, and that was definitely an exciting game and was well worth the watch on Saturday.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. So I'm running down some more scores, Dan. Not really a big upset, but unranked Colorado gets the win over Arizona State University, number 24 ranked, 34-31. And a game I want to talk a little bit about. Yes, Gardner Minshew was at that game. I went to bed at about midway through the second quarter, and it was a pretty decent score. Washington State University losing to UCLA 67-63. UCLA gets their first win over that, and it ends up UCLA and Washington State scoring over 60 points each. And I was like, wow. So pretty big high scoring game there in the late game. Not sure if you watched that one, Dan, but pretty high scoring and back and forth towards the end of that one.
I didn't get to see it live, but I'll tell you my thoughts were the Washington State just shot themselves in the foot time and time again, Josh. They had 6 turnovers in the ball game. UCLA just had the 1 turnover. And, that's going to kill you time and time again. They lost 4 fumbles off those 6 turnovers. So They basically self-imploded in this football game. There's no other way to put it. But man, Gordon, the quarterback for Washington State, 41 of 61, 570 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's
9 touchdowns. That's ridiculous.
It takes 4 weeks for some quarterbacks to throw that many touchdowns.
And he did that all in a game.
One game.
Wow.
Almost 600 yards, 9 touchdowns. I couldn't believe when I saw that stat line.
Wow.
And yeah, that's also a bad look for the Pac-12, a conference, that usually a team like Washington State is one of the supreme teams as it's been. When the Pac-12 has a ranked team, that's usually how it is. But that shocked me. That's all I have to say. You got to give credit to UCLA. They forced turnovers. They were able to cash in on those opportunities. Scored 29 points in the fourth quarter. And that's how they fought back to win the football game. A convincing win at that. 67 points is not something to sneeze at.
Yeah, most definitely a great recap and summary of the college football scoreboard. Any last thoughts before we move on, Dan?
I don't have anything this week. Since Tech was off, I can't complain too much.
All right. Well, you know what that means. Moving on to week 3 of the NFL. Let's run down the score line. Then we'll give you our thoughts and opinions about the past week. Starting with the Thursday night game, Jacksonville over Tennessee 20-7. Then moving into Sunday, Buffalo in a close one over Cincinnati 21-17. I actually picked them in my Survivor Pick'em League. Buffalo over Cincinnati, and I'm still alive.
Good. Great
I'm still
pick.
alive. What's
Good
today's
pick.
date, by the way?
Today is the 25th. September 25th.
Is today Wednesday?
It is Wednesday, my dude.
Cool. I still have a day to get my pick in. I can't forget about that. Josh Rosen starts for Miami, and they only put up 6 points to Dallas, 31-6. Not surprising. Green Bay over Denver, 27-16. Indianapolis in a close one against Atlanta, 27-24. Kansas City over Baltimore, 33-28. Minnesota over Oakland, 34-14. New England over the Jets, 30-14. Detroit over Philly, dropping them to 1-2, 27-24. Carolina over Arizona, 38-20. New York over Tampa Bay, 32-31. Houston over Los Angeles Chargers, 27-20. San Francisco, 24. Pittsburgh, 20. New Orleans over Seattle, 33-27. Los Angeles Rams over the Cleveland Browns, 20-13. And the Monday Night Massacre Part 2, the Chicago Bears 31, the Redskins 15. We will get into all those, but what I really want to get into is, let me get it here, all the backup quarterbacks that are in the league. You have so many new faces under center for different teams. So I sort of want to get thoughts here from you, Dan, about who you think performed the best out of all the new quarterbacks who are replacing injured quarterbacks.
Tough. Okay.
Well, we stumped him there.
Are we just looking at week 3, right? That's how we're doing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have to say Gardner Minshew probably played the best out of all the quarterbacks that are new faces. He's just been exceptional. 204 yards, 2 touchdowns in that win. Kind of a snoozing game, if you will, just to, they only scored 20 points, obviously. So, but yeah, he pretty much carried their offense. So, and of course the mustache adds to the mystique of Gardner Minshew, and he may be the answer for them. I don't know if long term he's the guy, but certainly right now, this season, He's going to be the guy moving forward, obviously with Nick Foles' injury, but he impressed me the most, Josh. And the Titans' defense is not awful. I mean, they have a pretty decent defense. So the fact that he was able to play that well, really for me pushes him over the edge. Is the best new face quarterback that we've seen this week.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville, they really surprised me this week because I thought Tennessee was better than putting up 7 points. And Gardner Minshew proved us wrong. And like you said, he did carry the team and they held Tennessee to 7 points, which is really, really impressive to me.
Yeah, and I think the Jags need to run the football better. I mean, it's Leonard Fournette should have more than 66 yards rushing on 15 attempts. That's going to hurt him down the stretch. Now, they're not a playoff team this year, I don't think. Now they could surprise people, but they don't have the defense or the run game right now or they don't have the complete phase down, if you know what I mean. But if they're going to have to continue to rely on Gardner Minshew. They're going to have to run the football more effectively. So that, to me, is the key for them moving forward. Can they improve the run game? Because it hasn't been there. And Leonard Fournette's supposed to be the guy. So we'll see if he can improve because it just hasn't been there right now.
Yeah, so Gardner Minshew, big name. And moving on to another quarterback I'd like to talk about is Teddy Bridgewater. Last week, after coming in for Drew Brees, who suffered a hand injury, Teddy Bridgewater surprised me this
Played
game.
Well. Played
Yeah,
really well.
I know. They
Big
beat
upset.
the Seahawks, and I was very surprised after last week he could not get the offense in sync, and there was very little offensive production after Drew Brees went out. Not record-shattering numbers, only 177 yards and 2 touchdowns, but Russell Wilson had 406 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, and he still couldn't manage to beat the New Orleans Saints.
No, Teddy Bridgewater was great. I mean, he only had 8 incomplete passes. Like you said, it didn't look like the same quarterback that was playing just the week before. So he did what he had to do, Josh, but he also played a lot better than I think people are giving him credit for. The Saints were also able to run the football pretty well with Alvin Kamara finally getting some stuff done. So he helped him on the receiving end too, led him in receiving. So obviously, I think the game plan for Teddy Bridgewater was to get the football to Alvin Kamara in any way, shape, or form. So the Saints were able to do that. That was a big upset. I was surprised by that game, surprised by that score. I think maybe Seattle may have quite honestly just looked past them, Josh, which wouldn't have happened obviously if Brees was starting. But that was a wild game to say the least. And Teddy Bridgewater, it's close between he and Gardner Minshew for the best performance last week for a backup quarterback coming in that situation.
Yeah, you can never overlook a team because they don't have their starting quarterback. That's one thing that will lead your team to a loss just like that if you don't prepare for the backup quarterback if he were to come in. So
that's true. And sorry, I was just gonna say one more thing.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, he just didn't have he hasn't had a lot of tape in the last, however long he's been in the NFL. I want to say, 3 or 4 years now. He hasn't had a whole lot of tape in the last 2 years, much less I think his last, real experience was 3 or 4 years ago. So it was probably hard for them to really plan for him because we just haven't seen him.
Yeah, most definitely there. So moving right along, Luke Falk from the New York Jets. Not really a good game to debut as a starting quarterback because they faced the Patriots and they lost 30-14 and he had an interception. But is there promise from Luke Falk that he could lead the Jets to a couple wins this season?
Oh man, I don't know. I think it's one of those situations. He's coming in with an extremely tough challenge. He was a third string quarterback just a couple weeks ago. So for him to have to jump into that role of the starting quarterback after two injuries, well, obviously Sam Darnold with mono, I think he's gonna. I don't know how much longer he'll be out, um, but you know that's a really tough question because on the scoreboard they only lost by two touchdowns. But I think they're going to have to lean on Le'Veon Bell, who hasn't played well, by the way, to run the football better and more effectively. If they're going to win some games, they're going to have that. Excuse me. And Falk is, I mean, he's not going to be able to do it on his own. I mean, that's just the bottom line. He's not that kind of quarterback yet. It takes several years to get accustomed to being that big play quarterback. If you're going to become that, a lot of guys don't. So to answer your question, because I kind of went around the question a little bit, I don't think he can win more than two games as the starter. And again, I don't know how long he's going to play, because I think Darnold will be back, should be back soon. But time will tell. I don't think he played that badly. I mean, on the stat sheet, it's not good. But I mean, you have low expectations for that guy. You don't expect him to come out and throw 5, 6, 7 touchdown passes in his first game, especially against a Patriots team that's extremely stacked and looks like they're a sure thing again for the Super Bowl. So I just think it's too early, Josh. We need to see more games with Falk playing, because in a couple weeks, if he's still the starter, which I said it depends on, it depends when Darnold's going to get back. So, I think we need to see more before we can judge, is he going to win some games for the Jets? Because they're just not a good football team across the board. It's not just the quarterback position.
Yeah, and from the reports I've been hearing, Sam Darnold is getting sidelined still because they don't want him risking a lacerated spleen due to his mono infection. So,
Yeah.
great point there. Definitely don't know how long he will be in, but not a good way to start off against the New England Patriots.
No, that's definitely not the opening game you want to have against the best team in the NFL. I guess you could argue that it's the Chiefs too, but the one of the top tier teams in the NFL. That's a very tough assignment for any quarterback, whether they be a veteran quarterback or a guy like him who's extremely young and has never started an NFL game before.
Yes, indeed. And a similar situation in the next game we're going to talk about. Josh Rosen, former Arizona Cardinal, coming to the Dolphins. He gets put in against the Dallas Cowboys and did not throw a touchdown or an interception in that game, but got 200 yards passing. But once again, not a good start. Yeah, he's been in the league, but still not a good start against the Dallas Cowboys for his first game in a Dolphins uniform starting.
Yeah, I think Rosen's going to be one of those guys that is an NFL journeyman, kind of a backup journeyman, if you will, going to different teams throughout his career. I just don't know if he's going to make it in this league as a quarterback. I've been sort of, cautious of him ever since he was drafted. So I'm not sure. I don't see it. The arm strength isn't there. The accuracy isn't there. Who knows? He can improve that over time. And again, like you said, not an easy task once again to come out and have to play the Dallas Cowboys, who have been, whether you want to admit it or not, one of the hottest teams in the NFC right now, if not the hottest team. But we'll see what happens. I think time will tell. Like I've said a lot on this here program. He was 18 to 39. That's just not good. So I could see him really at the end of this being a bust. I mean, he was a pretty high draft choice. So yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to make a whole different conversation out of this. But one of the reasons he's just a journeyman and a backup, in my opinion, is because Arizona ruined him. 1 year and then he gets shipped off for Kyler Murray. So that's just my opinion. But he got to start this week. Hopefully next week he can do a little bit better. Um, we've talked about Jacoby Brissett, and I want to talk about him a little bit more against Atlanta. The
Okay.
Colts in general just look like a team who is playing well even without Andrew Luck. Jacoby Brissett has been in a starting role before, and I think he's doing a great job. And they beat the Falcons who are sort of struggling this year, 27-24. And Jacoby Brissett and the Colts look pretty darn good still.
Yeah, I think people counted them out, Josh, at the beginning of the season. And I have a friend down here who's a Colts fan. And he said, no, Brissett's a pretty good backup. He's a serviceable NFL quarterback. And I just kind of rolled my eyes and said, yeah, right, we'll see what happens. But, I mean, he's got 646 yards passing and 7 touchdowns on the season already and only 1 interception. So he has really played extremely well and has given the Colts a chance to win football games. So, I'm not saying, I think he gives you another factor that Andrew Luck wasn't able to do, and that's, Brissett's a pretty mobile quarterback. And I think he works better behind this offensive line anyway than Andrew Luck did. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Andrew Luck. Again, it's way too early to talk about any of that stuff yet. I think the Colts are in pretty good hands, Josh. I think Brissett's a pretty good quarterback, and he's only going to get better as time goes on and as he gets more experience, which is what he needs right now. The Falcons aren't a joke. I mean, the Falcons are a pretty good team. They can win some games. So it's been a great start of the season for Jacoby Brissett, and hopefully he continues to improve and get better in this system. And that AFC South is a strange division. So we'll see what that brings. I think the Colts could be a playoff team. I don't question that. It's very possible, especially like I said with this division. So anything can happen, but I think Brissett's going to continue to play well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Brissett, he's played for the Patriots when Tom Brady got suspended, and then their backup quarterback, I think it was Jimmy Garoppolo at the time, if I remember correctly, he got injured. Then Brissett came in and did pretty well. So he's not a stranger to that.
No, he's not. He's been in the league since 2016. So it's really a small sample size, Josh. He's only played in 26 games total, only started 20 games. And, I think Andrew Luck got hurt in 2017 and we saw Jacoby Brissett play, 13 touchdowns, 7 picks, and he started almost the whole season. So, it's just too small of a sample size, but he looks to be getting a lot better. And I think that's the thing that's great. When you're a head coach of the Colts, when you're Frank Reich or just lost my train of thought there. I apologize. Jim Irsay, the owner. That's something that you really want to see. You want to see improvement, and he has improved. And like you said, he had a chance to back up Tom Brady, and I'm sure Brady taught him some things, and he's definitely done a good job learning behind he and Andrew Luck, who are 2 great quarterbacks, has really helped them, and you can see that on the field.
Yeah, most definitely. So I want to move on here to the next QB1, new QB1. Kyle Allen of the Carolina Panthers. They got the win in Arizona 38-20. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, first off, before I go into the Panthers. Yeah, Kyler Murray seems to be more comfortable each week, and they're still a young team. And I think Kyler Murray now has some promise moving forward into the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. He's been running for his life, the poor guy, with that offensive line. but he's played well. He had 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns this past week in that loss to the Panthers. So not his best performance. But look, when you're a rookie quarterback, you're going to have games like that. When you're a veteran quarterback, you're going to have games like that. So I think if the Cardinals are able to get some receivers and stop putting all their faith in, a 49-year-old receiver named, Larry Fitzgerald. He's not 49. I'm just kidding around. But the bottom line is, excuse me. He's going to be getting better, and the Cardinals just need a better offensive line. It's terrible right now, and he has to run out of the pocket and make a lot of bad throws because he doesn't have time. So if the Cardinals can build through not only the draft, but free agency is important for them too, then they can be a good team out in that division. It's a very tough division to have success in, but I think they can do it in 3 to 4 years. They could maybe be a perennial playoff team.
Yeah, most definitely. And moving over to the Carolina Panthers, Kyle Allen, 4 touchdowns in that game on 261 yards. He's already been named the starter for week 4 against Tampa Bay. Looks like another quarterback who could do some great things. Not sure how long Cam Newton's going to be sidelined for, but definitely could be an answer moving forward.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the Cam Newton situation is it's not looking good for him when the backup quarterback played that well. Now, to be fair, it was against the Cardinals defense. But the future, I think you have to start thinking about the future, and Cam Newton's just had a ton of injuries. He's been beaten up behind that offensive line, and it's time to start. Teams don't like to do it, but you have to start preparing for the inevitable, which is retirement, which is that future. Cam Newton really has played well, and I think it's been mostly due to the fact that he's had so many injuries, undisclosed injuries even. So maybe Kyle Allen can be that answer. I don't know. It's one game. Again, sports talk shows make a big deal out of it, and like they have with Daniel Jones, not quite as much as they have with Daniel Jones. I don't know if we're gonna talk about him, I'm sure, but he had a great football game. What else can you say? His receivers really played well too. But I don't know if he's a permanent answer or not. I think he's definitely an option for the Cardinals, for the Panthers. And like I said, they have to start preparing for the future without Cam, because it looks inevitable right now that his injuries are going to keep him out for at least the immediate future.
Yeah, good point there, and I wanted to get to that next. Cam Newton and his future with Carolina, he definitely does not look like a MVP style quarterback when he was in the Super Bowl against Denver. But how much longer do you think Cam has with the Carolina Panthers with all these injuries building up?
It's hard to estimate that, Josh. He's been there since 2011 now. That's obviously 8 years for people who are doing simple math out there. I think once you get to year 10, which is vastly approaching, I think then you reevaluate your situation, or maybe sooner. It just depends on how severe the injuries are. No one really knows right now. But like I said, he hasn't played like himself, and you have to start thinking about life after football when you don't have your quarterback who was supposed to save the franchise. But we'll see what happens, Josh. It's just too soon to talk about his future. Again, Kyle Allen's only played 1 game. We'll see what happens. I think by week 10 or 11 we may have a more clear picture. That's quite a ways away now, I realize, but we may be able to understand what's going to happen more in that case. So
yeah, and you talked about him. We're going to get into him right now. Daniel Jones. Pat Shurmur decided he had enough of Eli Manning, which I really disagree with. Eli has led the Giants to 2 Super Bowls. Yes, he's not in his prime anymore, but after 2 games, he's like, yeah, let's throw in Daniel Jones. And yeah, he makes a pretty good comeback. 23 for 36, 336 yards and 2 touchdowns in that comeback win against Tampa Bay. And boy, how Tampa Bay lost that game was ridiculous. But
Yeah,
before I get into that, Daniel Jones just looked great. And I think he might be the answer for the New York Giants. I had a feeling he'd come in for the Giants, but I just didn't think it would be this early in the season.
I agree with part of what you said. I agree with that last part. I thought he would come in later in the year. I think fans get restless around, week 6, week 7 when the starting quarterback is just playing so poorly, and they'll put the young backup in. So that's when I thought he would get a chance. But I actually agree with the move. I think Eli has been awful for really the last 4 to 5 seasons. And there comes a point when you just can't have poor quarterback play anymore. You have to make a change, and I think that's why they made the move to Daniel Jones. I think he's been a little overhyped. I know how well he played. I see the numbers. I see all that stuff. But people are anointing him like the next great quarterback, and people in the media just tend to take that narrative and run with it, and just drill it into the ground. There's been a lot of quarterbacks who have had great first games, first few games in the NFL, and they've been terrible ever since and have been busts. So I don't know if he's going to be a bust. It's way too early to tell. I can say he has a pretty good attitude, unlike a lot of selfish quarterbacks who have only thought of themselves, who have been some of the most famous busts of all time. And he is very hungry to win. And he made some really good throws, Josh. There's no doubt about it. And I think the Giants have pretty solid receivers too. But we'll see what happens. I do think Eli's done at the end of the day. I mean, he's been in the league for 15 years. He has not played. He's been one of the lower tier quarterbacks for the last 4 to 5. And I mean bottom of the NFL, 28, 29, 30 overall, as far as his numbers are concerned. So I think the move to Daniel Jones, it gives them a spark, possibly in that division where now your Washington Redskins sit in last place, and I don't think many people are surprised by that. But maybe he's the quarterback for the future. Again, it's one of those things that I've been saying this the whole podcast. I just don't know. It's just way too early to tell. And again, the Giants got lucky at the end of that game because the Buccaneers hooked a field goal, less than a 40-yard field goal. So anyway, Eli's done. Daniel Jones is most likely the future. I don't know how bright of a future, how strong of a future he has, but he played extremely well, and he's got a lot of talent. There's no denying that. I'm not denying that at all.
Yeah, I sort of want to go back to when you were talking about the media and how the high praises for Daniel Jones. Yeah, I don't agree with that. He has to earn his praise, and them just saying he's the next king for New York or whatever, I just don't get that. And yeah, he has to earn it, and he played a pretty good game, but can he keep that momentum up? Because he is just a rookie, and rookies tend to make mistakes down the line. So we'll just have to see how the media reacts and all that when he makes those first few mistakes,
Well, and it also adds fuel to the fire that he's in, the biggest media market one of the biggest media markets of all, which is New York City, obviously. But yeah, that just happens in the media in sports media. They just make such a big deal about every little thing that happens, especially nowadays. It's gotten out of control with certain players. When they do one thing that's great on the field, they're the next great thing, and that's it. And then it becomes a cold take. Once 3 to 4 weeks down the line. So I think that's the target we're looking for here, Josh. A month from now, is Daniel Jones still is he helping the Giants win football games? I think that's how it goes. But I really think you have to give him the whole season to honestly judge how he's going to play, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're just not good enough, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They are pathetic. So they're not a playoff team. But you want to see the quarterback help them win football games if he can. If it's not his fault, then we're going to know. So give him the season, see what happens. Eli's done either way. I just think he's tired. He can't throw the football anymore, and Daniel Jones is definitely the future of the New York Giants.
So do you think Eli will retire at the end of this season?
I really don't see why he wouldn't at this point. 14-year pro. He's been around the league a long time, but he's just not good. I mean, he doesn't have the arm strength. He doesn't have the accuracy. It's sad because he doesn't look like the same quarterback he was when they won that Super Bowl. Of course, that was 8 years ago now. So yes, I think he retires. I think he goes out. I don't know. I think he goes out in a pretty good way with the Giants. Helped them win 2 Super Bowl rings against the Patriots, which is pretty good. A lot of quarterbacks can't say that. But his numbers are not great as far as a Hall of Fame quarterback's concerned. But I'm not the one who votes for the guys who end up in the Hall of Fame. But I think he's gone after the season, and I think he sees the writing on the wall, Josh, because Daniel Jones. There's this buzz around him now, and that's hard to get rid of. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. But definitely Eli is gonna go down as a Hall of Famer. Besides, regardless of how he's been playing the past couple of seasons, past his prime, but definitely do not count him out. He will be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I'm not counting him out. But his numbers haven't been great, but. Again, I'm not the person who decides that.
Yeah, so moving on, we'll talk about the Buccaneers next. That wraps up our quarterbacks, the new QB1s in the league as of right now. So moving on, I want to obviously talk about the Buccaneers and what the heck is Bruce Arians thinking? My goodness, like Bruce Arians, I hear reports saying he took a delay of game because he says his kicker is better from longer range. How did that work out for you, Bruce? The Giants won that football game. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard a coach say after a game. It doesn't make a damn bit of sense. And I don't know what to think. I think Bruce Arians is a good coach. He seems like a relatively smart guy. Matt Gay hit a long of 52 yards during the game. So maybe that's what he was looking at and thinking about. But he also missed 2 extra points in the same game. So I don't understand that. I saw you post that on Facebook, and I just commented. I'm like, what an idiot, basically. And I don't get it. I don't get it. That's all I can say about it because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't get it either, and Tampa Bay deserves to lose after that comment Bruce Arians said.
Absolutely. It's surprising he didn't apologize for it or say I misspoke or anything. He just kind of went with it. He's like, oh, whatever.
Bruce Arians was a pretty good coach, but that was very questionable in my opinion, and I was very surprised when I heard that.
Yeah, and it makes their own players lose faith in them. As a head coach, can he really lead us if that's the way he feels about it? Take the delay of games because our kicker can kick it further. That just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make sense. And the players will act like, well, he doesn't want to win, so why should I want to win? And the Bucs will go 2-14 or something like that. But,
man. So moving on. Oh, sorry. Were you wrapping some up there?
No, I just said it's insane. That was all I finished with.
Oh, okay. So moving on, I want to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 0-3 as of this week, losing to the Buffalo Bills. But there's a lot of things I like about them so far. Andy Dalton still doesn't look the best, but there are a lot of things that I see from the Bengals. They're improving, and I think their new head coach is almost getting ready to cash out on a few wins. What does Cincinnati have to do to improve to get better? And get a couple wins? Because I feel like it's coming for him.
I think it starts with the quarterback. That guy who's been there for so long, Andy Dalton. He just hasn't played well. He's turned the football over a lot this year already, and it starts with him. He's the leader. He's been the leader since he got there. So, he's 31 now, which is
The Bengals have Miami.
which is insane to me. I can't believe he's 31. I feel old now. He's got 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's not bad, but it's not what you want. So it starts with him, but it also starts with the running game. They just haven't got anything going. Mixon has not played well. I had a friend who drafted him. He's been disappointed. Just 88 yards this season on 32 attempts for him, and then Giovanni Bernard. I didn't even know he still played for them. He's got 3 attempts for 5 yards in that game. So and the defense is absolutely awful for Cincinnati from front to back. They really have nobody. So I mean, I'm happy because they're in our division, and the more they lose, the better we look. So I think fans had an idea coming in they were going to struggle this year, and they certainly have so far. So I'm not sure where it all starts, Josh. I think they honestly have to get younger. They have to get younger. I think they may need to find another quarterback. And that may surprise people to hear me say that, but Andy Dalton, he's just not getting it done for him. He'll have a good game here and there, but overall, I mean, he's a below average quarterback, or maybe just an average quarterback. So I don't know. They have to do everything better on defense, though. I mean, their defense is just horrific, especially their secondary. And I think they're old. I think as a team, they're older. And those younger teams are going to start to get better, and the older teams are going to get worse. That's just how it goes.
Yep. So Cincinnati 0-3. Hopefully they can cash out a win there soon. Great thoughts there. Moving on. Although Denver is a struggling team this year at 0-3, Green Bay still looks like a playoff caliber team after last year, missing the playoffs, struggling. Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur look like they are having a great relationship together. Everything about the Green Bay Packers looks pretty darn good there in Lambeau. Can Green Bay make it back to the playoffs and possibly go farther than last year?
Yeah, I don't doubt it, especially the way that Chicago's been sort of up and down so far this year, and I think the Vikings are one of those teams flip a coin whether they're going to win or not, and the Packers are stepping up. I mean, Vald Scantling, I forget how to pronounce his name. Scantling, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the receiver. He's played extremely well for them so far. And they've really loved having him on their team. And Rodgers targeted him 10 times. Of course, he played for the Packers. Played for the Packers last season, but he really didn't see much playing time. So it's great to see him get involved. And Rodgers, for once, finally looks healthy. He's not getting hit a lot, and I think that's key. If they can keep Rodgers, if the offensive line can keep Rodgers on his feet, the Packers are going to win games, and they're going to be a playoff team, especially the way they're playing right now.
Yeah, I still feel like Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's looking very well this year.
I totally agree with you, Josh. He has 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's pretty darn good. So I think he's in the conversation for one of the top quarterbacks in the league and has been for some time. Of course, last year he kind of tumbled a little bit because of the injuries, missing a lot of time. The last few years he's missed quite a few games for them. So I think I don't know if he's an MVP candidate because I think that guy who plays quarterback over in Kansas City is pretty darn good. But Rodgers certainly has impressed a lot of people so far because I think I was skeptical of him too, because of all the injuries and the time he's missed, that he wouldn't be the same quarterback. But he's played extremely well so far, and more importantly, he's had that great bond with his head coach, which he didn't have before.
Yeah, most definitely there. So, Dan, I want to get your thoughts. It's time for your soapbox before I let you loose. Baltimore gets handed their first loss by the Kansas City Chiefs 33-28. Although they did lose, Baltimore still looked pretty darn good. I I feel like if I was a Ravens fan, I after watching that game, I would say, "Hey, we played pretty well. Kansas City's a good team. They beat us, but there's a lot of positive things I saw from this game. They actually came back from a being down by a couple points and kept it close, but Baltimore still looks pretty good despite their 2-1 record, Dan."
Yeah, I'm not upset with the loss. The fact that we missed a fourth down conversion, we went for the 2-point conversion 3 times and didn't get a single one. Pretty much cost us the football game. Um, so John Harbaugh, I really think he gets blamed for this loss because his decisions ultimately costed us points. Um, and that on that fourth down, we were easily in field goal range. So we have the best kicker in football, which I don't understand why we just didn't take the points. Um, so the refs also had some bad calls that went against us. There was one that was just egregious um, on the sidelines that was called a pass interference, and he barely laid a hand on him, which gave the Chiefs a chance in the red zone, and they eventually scored a touchdown on that drive. Um, yeah, we did have a lot of penalties as a team. Lamar didn't play his best game. He didn't have a touchdown pass, but he did throw for 267 yards, and he was 22 of 43. Our defense really struggled in that second quarter. We gave up 23 points, and so we fell behind 23-6 at halftime. That is tough to come back from, and we gave it a good effort. And again, we just missed opportunities. You go for it on fourth down once, I understand that. But they should have taken the 3 there, and then missing 3 2-point conversions. That's killer. That's killer. You can't. You add those up, and you win the football game.
Yeah, so some negatives, but mostly positives. And I like Baltimore probably getting a wild card spot or into the playoffs this year. I really think Baltimore can do it.
I think they win the division, and I still think they win the division. I think they're the best team in that division, bar none. And I think we'll obviously find that out when they play the Browns on Sunday. And I hope we just crush the Browns. I'm really hoping we do.
Yeah.
So we can shut some of these haters up. So we'll see.
Yeah, so moving on to another division opponent in the Ravens division, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I totally forgot about Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph got his first start in Pittsburgh. We'll tie that in. 2 touchdowns and an interception, but they lose by 4 to San Francisco, who looks like they're undefeated and looks like a team that could go on to things. I'm not sure if this is a fluke, but the Niners look pretty good, but the Steelers, they're struggling. And Mike Tomlin, I could possibly see him on the hot seat. I don't want him to go. He's a great coach for the Steelers. You might disagree since you're a Ravens fan, Dan, but
no, I think he's a wonderful coach. But he's costed them several games, and over his years there with some poor decision making. I still think he's a good coach, but at the end of the day, he's going to take the blame when they lose football games, because you can't really blame Mason Rudolph. He played pretty well for them. The Steelers offense, James Conner, what is going on with him?
Only 43 yards. That's unacceptable.
He's been no good this year. I really think they do miss Le'Veon Bell, and people aren't going to admit that, but Le'Veon Bell was unbelievable, and they expected James Conner to fit that role, and he did a pretty solid job last season. But he just has not been able to get going this year, and that's a problem for Pittsburgh, because you have a rookie quarterback, or not a rookie quarterback, but a young quarterback, and again, it's crucial to get more than one area going, and they have to run the football better. But yeah, Garoppolo didn't even play his best game, Josh. He had 2 picks and only 1 touchdown. And the Steelers defense actually played pretty well, especially early on, and through the early part of the third quarter, which is when the teams finally started to score. But the overall, the 49ers just made more plays. And it's tough for an East Coast team to go out to the West Coast and play. And, regardless of what people will say about it. But, the Steelers have been a huge disappointment. And I don't know if Big Ben would have been better for them in this football game, because he really struggled before that injury anyway. But the bottom line is, the Steelers are not going to make the playoffs. They're not. They're just not good enough right now. And I don't even know if an 0-3 team has ever made the playoffs. I haven't done any research on that. Mason Rudolph played extremely well. The interception he threw was pretty awful. I watched most of the game. So, the Steelers led 20-17 with 5.5 minutes to go, which is unbelievable. But they had a fumble. They had a fumble that the Giants, the 49ers, got in their territory, and they were able to score with about 1:20 to go, and that gave them the lead and the win. So, I'm not sure. Pittsburgh's an anomaly to me. They have talent. They certainly have talent, but the talent just hasn't come through for them. And defensively, they're just not a good team defensively. Their secondary is pretty awful, about as bad as they were last season. Anyway, I've talked a lot about the Steelers. I'm going to turn it over to you because I've been yapping for it feels like years now.
Oh my, yeah, but I really hate to say this, but I think Mike Tomlin's on the hot seat, early hot seat candidate.
I agree.
Right there.
I totally agree.
I hate to say it, he is a great coach, but I think the Steelers are just going to be done with him after this season, because their 0-3 start will lead them and like you said, they probably won't make the playoffs. I agree with you there. So what's next for Pittsburgh in the future? Big Ben, who knows how much longer he has. Mason Rudolph could possibly be the answer for him. He might not, but there's some pieces in the puzzle that need to be solved for Pittsburgh, and I think it's going to start with firing Mike Tomlin, unfortunately.
I couldn't agree more. I think, he's shown that he's just not able to do it. Anymore. They're just not the same team. So, that does suck, because I think I really have a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. I know that surprises you coming from a dirty old Ravens fan. But at the end of the day, it's all about improving, and the Steelers just haven't been able to do that, and they haven't been able to get over the hump. And they aren't the same team they were when they were a Super Bowl contending team. So, I agree. I think Big Ben's future is not looking good right now, especially with the kind of injury he has. We'll see what happens, but it doesn't look good for him, unfortunately, and I hope he goes out the right way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. So, moving on from the AFC back into the NFC, a game I was very surprised over watching. The Philadelphia Eagles get stunned by the Detroit Lions 27-24. Eagles drop to 1-2. My keys from this game, this was not Carson Wentz's fault. He had 2 touchdowns, 19 for 36, 259 yards. He was not the problem. The problem was the receivers in their miscues, not looking at the ball and just dropping it. Like, very many incompletions that shouldn't have been incompletions. And the Eagles, they can't take care of the football. It was ridiculous. 3 fumbles, 2 of them lost to the Detroit Lions. So the Eagles really, really struggled at home against the Lions. So I'm not sure what they're going to have to do to fix that, but It, I'm not complaining since I am a Redskins fan, but the Lions, they looked all right. Matt Stafford, 201 yards with a touchdown. But I mean, their running game wasn't that great, but the Lions not really a storybook game with a bunch of numbers on it. The Eagles just shot themselves in the foot with all these turnovers and ended up handing Detroit the win.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, and the Lions are. I don't know if they can challenge the Packers for that top spot in the NFC North. Probably not, just because the Lions were gifted that game. I thought with the turnovers and such. Um, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad, and especially for an Eagles team that if you recall, you and I both said that. Well, I think you picked the Cowboys to win your all's division. I said it could be the Cowboys or the Eagles, and so I've so far not not been right at all with my pick. But they just having an off season, and really before that game, Carson Wentz hadn't really showed up yet to the level that I think people are expecting. He played pretty well in this game. But that's another one of those games, and I honestly think some teams just look past other teams, Josh, and you can't do that in the NFL. You can't do that in any league, I should say, but especially not the NFL. And those two turnovers really costed the Eagles, obviously, with that late touchdown in the fourth quarter. So they've got a lot of work to do. And of course they have to play the Packers on the road in prime time. What is that? Let me go back here. Let me look. Let's track where I was. Okay, yeah, they play on Thursday Night Football against Green Bay. So that's a big test for them. And we'll see if they can play a little better.
Yeah, I feel like this NFC East division is just going to be a toss-up again. The Cowboys are currently leading it. I'll talk about some other teams in a moment, but I feel like the NFC East is really going to be a toss-up this year.
Well, I think the Cowboys are going to win the division handily. And
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be close.
yeah.
I think they win the
Let me
division by
rephrase
3 or
that,
4
Dan.
games.
I'm sorry. Let me
You mean the
rephrase that. I
second place,
think
third
it's
place,
going to be a
fourth place.
toss-up between second, third, and fourth place.
Okay. Yeah, I thought
I'm
that's
going to
what you meant. I
rephrase
just wanted
it
to
that
make sure.
way.
Okay. Yeah. I totally agree. Look, I think the Redskins. Let's face it. I mean, they've probably got last place locked up. I hate to say it, but they have been a complete dysfunction.
Yeah, I'll get
Complete
into that
disarray.
shortly. Don't you worry.
I'm not worried at all. I feel great.
Oh my. Yeah. So before I talk about the Redskins, unfortunately, I want to talk about the Cleveland Browns in Freddie Kitchen's
Ew.
dumb move to run a draw play on 4th and 9 in the fourth quarter, and they
Yeah.
did not get it. Well, like what's the deal with that? They ended up shooting themselves in the foot with questionable
I don't.
coaching, and the Rams won that game.
Yeah, I have no clue what the hell he was thinking. And I'll say this, and I heard someone say this, and I thought there was a little bit of an overreaction, but now I'm starting to think it's true. Was Freddie Kitchens really qualified for this job? And I think that's a good question. We'll see come week 10, 11, 12 when they start to when they really want to fire him at that point, if the Browns are still struggling. But the Rams are a great football team, but they did not play. They played pretty poorly, I thought. But yeah, 4th and 9, a draw play. I don't understand that. I don't get it. And to me, he just doesn't seem like he's head coaching material. That's just my opinion. But I love to see it. I love to see the Browns crumble after everyone said they were going to be this powerhouse team that is a shoo-in for the playoffs and maybe has a shot at the Super Bowl. I think that's bull crap. That the off season doesn't matter. It's what you do in the regular season that counts. And so I think what I'm trying to say is, I hope the Browns continue to lose, obviously. But I think they're obviously gonna win some football games. It's just they have a lot of talent. They shouldn't be playing this poorly. They should be able to score more than 13 points. That's pathetic. That's pathetic, especially with the guys they have on offense. But I said this at the beginning of the season, actually in the preseason when we started this conversation. You know, everyone was talking about how the Browns are going to be, you know, this unbelievable turnaround story, blah 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 blah. And I said, I just don't see it. You know, I don't see the I just didn't get the hype. And it's still early. It's still early, but it's just a lot of those people who are saying how great they were going to be are starting to go back in their cocoons. So I don't know. Like I said, the Browns are going to win some football games. I'm actually worried about playing them next week, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and this game was a game where the Rams did not play well at all. Jared Goff had 2 interceptions, and Todd Gurley only rushed for 43 yards, and they still managed to beat the Cleveland Browns. This was not a good game for the Los Angeles Rams at all.
No, but I think they'll take it because they got the win. But yeah, 2 interceptions, and they also lost a fumble too. They gave the Browns a lot of chances, and the Browns offense just couldn't get it done, which I love to see. It makes me happy to see Baker Mayfield upset. Upset in that on the field situation when they aren't playing well. So yeah, a lot of those people who have had them as paper champions are now starting to, cower away and tuck themselves away. So I hope they continue to struggle, but they won't. I think the Browns they'll obviously win some games. But I think next week's a key game for both of our teams. It's really going to go a long way in seeing how this AFC North is going to shape up.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it just comes down to how long until the Browns start looking good. I'm not sure if they will be that storybook team everybody's saying, but so far they haven't lived up to anything good. And you'll just have to wait and see in the next couple of weeks if the Browns can improve in how Freddie Kitchens looks. But like case in point, that call Freddie Kitchens made on 4th and 9 was a terrible call, and it shouldn't have been called.
Yeah, it's just bad coaching. It's just bad coaching, and it reflects poorly on the Browns, front office who made the decision to bring him aboard. Now, I'm not saying coaches don't make decisions that lose them football games, but I think he had some comments after the game that he was pretty nasty about the whole situation. So, I'm not sure if that's the right hire, but we'll see what happens. It's one of those things, like everything else with this season. It's such a young season. 8-9 weeks from now, we can finally start to put some conclusions on the thing, but it's still too early to say, Freddie Kitchens was a good hire. Freddie Kitchens is not a good hire, because they got that one win against the Jets, nonetheless, but they got that one win.
Yeah. So, moving on, last but not least, the Chicago Bears and Washington Redskins. Yeah, just get your popcorn out, Dan, because I might be at this for a little while.
Get my drum roll going.
But since 1998, the Redskins have only won one Monday Night Football game since the year I was born. 1998. Their record on Monday Night Football is 1-17. That's ridiculous. And I mentally prepared myself for the Bears to crush the Redskins. And the Bears had themselves a darn good football game. Khalil Mack and the rest of the defense looked amazing. You had Mitch Trubisky go off. He did not go off the first 2 games of the season, and I benched him in my fantasy league. But he had 231 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. But, I mean, that interception didn't really matter. The Redskins looked terrible. They're the most dysfunctional football team in the National Football League. I will say that right now. I am a fan, but it's ridiculous. And it all starts from up top. Dan Snyder. It's all dysfunctional, and the Redskins will never be a good football team without new ownership and a new head coach. I'm not surprised Jay Gruden has not left yet. I'm surprised he has not been kicked off to the curb after that ridiculous showing on Monday Night Football. I'll give credit where it's due. The Chicago Bears, they played one heck of a game. Their defense looked amazing. Pressured Case Keenum all night. But
Yeah.
and Case Keenum had 3 interceptions. Good job, Bears defense, and he had a pick 6. Ha ha, Clint Dix, former Redskins. So getting to that, some the key points for the Redskins. I did like Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is a great wide receiver. He has a lot of
Can be good.
promise. And
Good kid.
Steven Sims Jr. He looks really good as well. But other than that, I hate Jay Gruden. I hate his play calling. Greg Minuski's defense cannot do anything. Greg Minuski needs to get fired. Jay Gruden needs to get fired. It's ridiculous. And Jay Gruden and Adrian Peterson do not have a good relationship anymore. That's why AP only got 37 yards in this darn football game. And he should be getting the ball more. But he's not. It's ridiculous. And it's all because Jay Gruden doesn't like Adrian Peterson's running style. Adrian Peterson is a future Hall of Fame running back, and he's getting sat on the bench for Chris Thompson, primarily a third down back. So the Redskins struggling. I heard reports today that Colt McCoy came back to practice because Case Keenum is in a walking boot on his foot. The news is saying he will be back for week 4, but still a walking boot. This just comes back to a whole nother quarterback controversy, and it's only week 3 into week 4. So a lot of stuff that I just cannot wrap my head around anymore. I'm still going to watch the Redskins. I'm not going to hop the bandwagon, but a lot needs to change. And I think it's going to have to start from upper management, Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen, on to firing Jay Gruden and Greg Minuski. They both have to go. Hands down. Jay Gruden has not proved himself at all. And Jay Gruden needs to go.
Yeah, I totally agree with pretty much everything you said. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. You are. I was standing on my soapbox. You were standing on your stepping stool. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything. But yeah, I think they have to clean house, Josh. And it starts with. I think I think the general manager has to walk. I think everybody's got to go. You got to start over. You got to start over, and that's the bottom line. They're in a rebuild, whether they want to admit it or not, whether Dan Snyder wants to admit it or not. So it's just extremely tough, I'm sure, to be a Redskins fan. But yeah, it was pretty pathetic on Monday night. It was honestly embarrassing, Josh. It was embarrassing, especially when you're down 28-3 at the half. Now the Redskins made sort of a comeback, but then it just wasn't enough. And I think the game wasn't as close as even the scoreboard said it was, because the Bears offense really played pretty conservative and just ran the football most of the time in the second half. So, yeah, I totally agree with just about everything you said. And again, it starts from up top. Like you said, it starts with Daniel Snyder, and he started, bought the team, was only 34 years old. He was either 34, between 34 and 36. I can't remember off the top of my head. He was very young and grew up a Redskins fan. There's a pretty good story about him that I saw the other day. That wasn't a story from about 10 years ago, kind of a feature piece. But he likes to stay out of the way of the media. Really, he doesn't go near that stuff. Anyway, it got sidetracked. They're just a bad football team. I mean, there's no other way around it. They might win 3 or 4 games, quite honestly. And the thing about it with Jay Gruden is the amount of excuses that he can come up with every week, and he can keep saying we're going to get better, we're going to get better, but as you've seen and as any fan has seen, it's just not happening. I don't think the players respect him as a coach, and that's the first thing that has to happen. The players have to want to go out and go to war for the head football coach, and I don't think the Redskins players are willing to do that for Jay Gruden. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him. He's not a good head coach. Pretty good coordinator with the Bengals, and he was with several other teams. Was never meant to be a head coach, and I think the Redskins have stuck with him for way too long. The Redskins need to go young at that position. Who knows? You could find the next Sean McVay. It's highly unlikely, but I almost think you have to start fresh. You have to just fire everybody, clean the whole front office out, and do what you have to do and make it happen quick, because the Redskins aren't getting any better anytime soon, and anytime in the close future. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah, and what you said, the Redskins were trying to make a comeback there. Case Keenum, you got to know where the goal line is. When you go for it on 4th and 1 and dive over the pile,
yeah, that was bad.
9 times out of 10, you're going to get the ball jarred loose when you're only holding it with one hand. And credit to the Bears defense, and they recover that fumble. Ridiculous, man. But that was my last point on that.
Well, I agree. In that situation, the quarterback just has to put his head down and run between the linemen. Because going up top like that is a huge risk, because exactly what happened to him can happen easily. Here's a report today from Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports. Jay Gruden said, I don't know if it was today or yesterday or whatever, that Dwayne Haskins is not too far away.
And that shouldn't be the case. Dwayne Haskins, I don't think is ready, and he needs to sit, wait, watch, and learn. So, I mean, if they throw Haskins in,
here's the thing.
I'm afraid this might turn into another RG3 saga.
Well, it's different. I think it's quite different than when RG3 was there. But it's better than what they have now, Josh. I mean, Case Keenum was awful. He was quite awful, and all those interceptions, especially the pick six. I mean, you just turning the ball over is bad enough, but when the team scores a touchdown off of it, you just can't have it. You got to try something else that's not working. So, I don't think it's crazy for them to try Dwayne Haskins. Now, I think they should try him in small doses. I don't know if you put him out there immediately, and just kind of throw his feet to the fire. I think that's a bad idea. But we'll see what happens.
The Redskins are just dysfunctional up and down.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And like I said, they've got a clean house. And I think Dwayne Haskins is going to get a chance sooner or later. But after that performance by Case Keenum, I think it's in the near future. Maybe even within the next week or two, we get to see what he can do. And maybe it'll be in a situation where they're getting crushed, and they just bring him in garbage time and see what he can do, which I think wouldn't be a crazy thing on either side. So.
Yeah, it's a messed up situation, and it's just I don't know anymore. But they just need to clear house. The Redskins just need to
start over.
It's been seen that they cannot rebuild this mess, and they just need to start over. But
yeah, I totally agree, man.
I don't think it's going to happen with our owner unless something more drastic happens. But I'm hoping changes happen soon.
Well, I think he's getting pressure to sell the team. I don't think he'll ever sell the team, and I know that's going to make you upset. Because he wants to see the Redskins win. He just makes the wrong decisions. He just does, and he's never really made the right decisions. I think the best decision he made was when they brought back Joe Gibbs for those few years, and I think the Redskins made the playoffs 2 out of the 3 years Joe Gibbs was there, and that's the last time they were a legitimate playoff team, because they made the playoffs a couple times since then. Oh my gosh, my Alexa just went off in the background. I apologize if you hear that.
No
She's
way,
just
Alexa interrupting our podcast.
Hold on, let me tell her to be quiet. 1 sec.
All right, well,
Alexa,
Dan is doing that.
Shut
Oh man, this is
All right,
quality.
shut
He
up. We're
just
good.
told Alexa to shut up. But
Oh, you heard that?
anyways, I'm gonna continue here while Dan's fixing with that. The Redskins.
I'm here.
Hey Dan, welcome back. Hopefully Alexa
Thanks.
wasn't too annoying, but anyways, the Redskins, it's just a headache for the fans, and I don't know. Dan Snyder, I guarantee you he will not sell the team, but there are changes that need to be changed immediately. And don't know when that will be. Hopefully by the end of this season, some changes will come. Hopefully Jay Gruden doesn't end up going through the end of this season. I would just love to see the Redskins not win a single game and get the first overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like right now. It looks like they're going to have the number 1 overall pick, but it's a mess. And I really feel for the Redskins fans that have stuck with them this long. I mean, that's part of being a fan, right? I mean, you're there with them through the good days and the bad days. So, it's just very tough.
Yep. So that concludes our week 3 wrap up of the National Football League. We got we're going to take a quick break. We got Fantasy Football Files coming up, plus my interview with NBC4 Washington's Sherry Burris. After that, me and Dan will be right back to preview week 4 of the NFL. You're listening to the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Football Files. As part of the Josh Kirby podcast, this is Jason Kamlowski, writer for Dynasty Football Digest. I'm going to go into some things from week 3 across the NFL. There were definitely some big offensive performances. You know, you had Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes getting together in Kansas City. Daniel Jones stepping in for Eli Manning, putting up a really nice game for the Giants. Kyle Allen stepping in for Cam Newton. You had Keenan Allen with a huge game. You had Mike Evans with a huge game. But what I want to start off with today is the injury to Saquon Barkley, which the injury to Saquon is definitely, going to shake up kind of some things with fantasy football, because obviously, in most leagues, he was probably a top 3 pick. Barkley with that high ankle sprain, not only could he be out, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, but that's an injury that kind of tends to linger a little bit. And with a guy like Barkley that just depends so much on explosive ability and, being able to get to the next level on his runs. I mean, he led the league last year in 20-plus yards runs. This could really be an injury that kind of, puts a damper on him even down the stretch. Now, depending on who you ask, they might tell you that, it's not something they're going to be worried about. And, this is one of those things where if they manage it the right way, he'd come back and be fine. And that's 100% true. There's a very good possibility if the Giants are slow with him and, they kind of take it easy here. And there's a very good chance that he could come back and be perfectly fine. But there's also a chance this thing could linger the rest of the year. So I think with Saquon Barkley, I mean, obviously if you're an owner, you got to be disappointed with the injury, but that's just kind of the risk you take when you're looking at these running backs, because they just take so much punishment each week with the way they with the way they play. So enter Wayne Gallman, who he has played before. Not an explosive back. He's he only averages about 4 yards a carry. He's never topped 60 yards rushing in an NFL game. He does give you receptions out of the backfield. He will catch the ball. He's had, I think, 3 different games where he's had at least 6 catches. Problem is he's never topped 44 yards receiving. So I think if you picked up Wayne Gallman, I think what you're hoping for is one of those situations, where maybe he can get you anywhere between 75 and 90 total yards, hopefully chips in some receptions, and if he can get into the end zone, it's just kind of icing on the cake. So, and I think with Daniel Jones, being the quarterback now in New York, the floor for the New York offense in general has got to be a little bit higher. Right now, the Giants have the second highest team total on the slate behind Kansas City, for week 4. And, it's an NFC East game against Washington. And usually for me, I tend to tread a little lightly with those NFC East games because sometimes they just tend to be, these slugfests that, don't necessarily always turn into a shootout. I think the range of outcomes this week for Daniel Jones is probably a little bit wider than most would think. But, you've got to like that team total because with an implied total of almost 27, I mean, you're talking, at least 3 touchdowns, but you got to think Jones is going to have a hand in probably at least 2 of them. So, if Daniel Jones is able to come out, get something going with Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard in the passing game, I mean, you could really be looking at, a nice game from Daniel Jones this weekend. I'm sure a lot of people probably picked him up either on Fab or waivers, depending on, what your other options are. I mean, I would definitely say that he's either a really high-end QB2 or even a low-end QB1. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to even say that, he's probably startable in all formats this week, even in a 10-teamer. And I think you could do worse just because with his ability to run the football as well, his floor is just a little bit higher than some of these other guys that we might be looking at. And there's some guys out there that really just have some tough matchups this week. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers playing against Philadelphia, I don't know on a Thursday night if that's, a slam dunk start, even though, it's hard to bench a guy like Aaron Rodgers. But, going down through here, you look at some of the teams that play. I mean, the Browns have the Ravens. So, obviously Baker Mayfield's not going to have, and he's not really looked that good anyways. But, that's a tough matchup for him. Patriots and the Bills, I actually think that's a sneaky game for the Patriots. I think that's going to be a tough one going into Orchard Park. So, Brady could have a tough time. You got the Texans and the Panthers. I mean, the Texans always play better at home. Deshaun Watson, but, that's a tough matchup for him. The guy that I would probably look at more than anybody this week, though, to spot start would obviously be Phillip Rivers going up against that terrible Miami defense. The only kind of thing sneaky about that game is, the Chargers were heading across to the East Coast and they're going to play a 1:00 game. So, you always got to watch that. But I definitely think Daniel Jones is startable, across all formats this week. And it's nice to see that New York, has been willing to kind of go with him because, Eli was washed. I mean, just absolutely washed. Really wasn't getting it done. So, welcome to the league, Daniel Jones. I've got him in a couple dynasty leagues. I was very high on him, compared to some others last year coming out in the draft. I'm not really into taking victory laps or any of that stuff, but it's good to see some of these young guys being able to come in and do that. Speaking of young guys, Kyle Allen, he also had a nice game last week for the Panthers, stepping in for Cam Newton. And look, it's obvious that Cam was not right injury-wise. He just, the first couple of weeks, the Panthers offense, outside of Christian McCaffrey, looked like it was just stuck in neutral. So you bring in Kyle Allen, 261 yards, 4 touchdowns, got DJ Moore involved more, which was really good to see because, DJ Moore was a guy I know a lot of people probably drafted him as, potentially even a wide receiver 2 this year. And through the first 2 games, he had kind of been disappointing. But, Moore had a really, really nice 52-yard catch and run touchdown, last week on a dig route, which is kind of his thing, right? Like he'll catch passes in space, be able to make something happen. But the thing about DJ Moore is, outside of that catch, for the touchdown of 52 yards, he only got 2 targets last week. So, you kind of got to ask yourself with some of this stuff, is that a product of Kyle Allen going elsewhere? Is that a product of, him being kind of phased out of, the offense a little bit. I mean, and I think the Panthers are probably a little bit underrated in terms of what their weapons are. I mean, the guy that I was kind of drifting towards more this year was Curtis Samuel. And Samuel racked up 7 targets last week and went 5 for 53 and a touchdown. But, I'm hoping some of these kind of secondary weapons for the Panthers, outside of McCaffrey can start to step up and maybe start producing because, I had a lot of faith in this Panthers offense coming into the year. I mean, Cam is probably my highest owned quarterback of anybody. But, so far they've just been such a wasteland. But they had a lot of explosive plays on Sunday. I mean, Allen only attempted 26 passes and he threw for the 261 yards. So when we look at this, the target leaders, were Samuel and Greg Olsen, and Olsen obviously had the 2 touchdowns. He's the one that had the big day. I would like to see DJ Moore get involved more with the offense like he was the first couple weeks. You've got to like the explosive touchdown ability he has. But with Kyle Allen, I do think the offense in Carolina is going to be better than it was with Cam the first couple weeks. It's hard to say how long Cam is going to be out, but it's one of those things, and you kind of look at what they've got, coming up this week. Going to Houston. I mean, that's not going to be an easy matchup. I mean, they've got an implied team total right now, almost 22 points. So, not the best team total on the slate for the Panthers. Kyle Allen is probably not a guy I'm going to start this week, even though, depending if you're in QB2 Superflex League, I mean, you may have to start him. I do think I would keep rolling out DJ Moore. Definitely keep rolling out Greg Olsen. Seems like Kyle Allen likes to throw to his tight ends. He threw a lot to Ian Thomas last year in Week 17. And I would definitely keep rolling out Curtis Samuel too. Curtis Samuel led the league in air yards in Week 2. And then, obviously, like I said, went 5 for 53 and a touchdown last week. But the guy really on the Carolina offense that obviously everybody was going to want is McCaffrey. I mean, he's just insane. Arguably the best running back in the NFL right now. And I know Saquon's hurt, but I think I would take McCaffrey over Saquon just because of the things he can do in the passing game. And, again, he didn't really get that involved last week, which I actually think for his long-term prognosis is probably a good thing because, he can't go through another season where he's catching 110 passes and touching the ball as many times as he did last year. But, he broke off that big run, that 76-yard touchdown run. 153 yards rushing last week, chipped in 3 for 35 in the passing game. I mean, just Christian McCaffrey's just, incredible. So, but as far as quarterback play goes, this week you've got Matt Ryan back at home, team total almost of 25. So you've got to like that. You've got, like I said, Daniel Jones going up against the Redskins. I actually think Case Keenum could be a decent start going against that Giants defense. Looks like the Giants' pass defense is just as bad as it's ever going to be. So I think, Case Keenum could be a start there. Phillip Rivers going to Miami, start him with confidence. Jacoby Brissett, he's been a nice kind of early season story with the retirement of Andrew Luck. I wouldn't mind starting Jacoby Brissett. Deshaun Watson, always Pat Mahomes, always Pat Mahomes. And the Lions on the other side of that matchup with the Chiefs, anytime a team's going up against the Chiefs, obviously with the Chiefs being able to score pretty much from anywhere, you've got to be able to kind of keep up with that. So Matt Stafford would be another start. Not interested in Baker Mayfield this week. Lamar Jackson, always interested in him because of the floor, with his rushing ability. Josh Allen, maybe take a flyer on him depending on what you got. Jared Goff returns home. They play the Bucks. Jared Goff would probably be my QB1, QB2 on the slate this week. Same thing, Russell Wilson. He's got another nice matchup with the Arizona Cardinals. And then I think Dak Prescott going up against the Saints. The Saints tend to give up rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So, Dak could be another one of those guys this week that's a really, he's just been really good the first 2 weeks of the season. Kellen Moore's kind of been a huge godsend to him in that offense. So, Dak is another guy that I would definitely start, no questions asked. Moving into the running back situations, we already touched on Saquon and it just, with these injuries, man, you're going to run into these situations sometimes, and it really sucks because Saquon is just such an incredible player, and you just hate to see these guys, especially guys young as him, just get hurt. And you don't want him to rush back, but as a fantasy owner, you want to see this guy in your lineup. But as a fan of the game, I would rather he come back and be healthy than try to push it and come back too soon, because Saquon's a guy that I want to see in this league for a long time. So honestly, as a Saquon owner, even I would say, I'd rather he come back at 100% than come back a moment before that. So, we've already kind of touched on Gallman. I mean, I think if you picked him up, he's fine. He's obviously not going to replace Barkley from a production standpoint, but I think if you picked him up, he's fine. Devontae Freeman looked like he had a little bit of a pulse last week. It looks like he might get going. I don't think the Titans are a great matchup for him this week, but, if you've drafted Devonta Freeman to be your RB2, then, you've got to keep rolling him out. It looks like the Chargers this week, news came out today. I mean, I'm recording this on Wednesday night. News came out today that Melvin Gordon will end his holdout and report to Chargers practice tomorrow. Now, he's not going to play this week. So, it's going to take him probably at least a week to get into game shape. But, Austin Eckler's been kind of like a Alvin Kamara light, if you will. He's kind of doing it all for them right now. Which is probably part of the reason why Melvin Gordon is wanting to come back, because Eckler's kind of driven down his value, kind of in the same way James Conner did last year with Le'Veon Bell. Conner came in last year and just really picked up where Bell left off. But Eckler so far this year has just been probably one of the better running back stories. I mean, I think right now he's like the RB3 overall in fantasy. And when you go in and you look at his game logs, he's had at least 6 targets in all 3 games so far this year. I mean, he's got 19 receptions already. So even if he's not able to, he's not going to give you 100 yards rushing. But I think even when Melvin Gordon comes back, I mean, Austin Eckler could still get, 10 to 12 touches a game and be a serviceable flex play. And, with where you probably drafted Austin Eckler, you've got to be happy with that. I mean, Austin Eckler was probably not, one of these earlier round guys. I mean, you might have waited until the 8th or 9th round or later to get Austin Eckler. So if, hold him, if you get knocked over with a trade offer for him, I mean, obviously you got to look at it, but I mean, I think he's a definite hold for me right now. He's a must start this week against a horrendous, Dolphins defense that, again, that's like another Coors Field situation there. So, Eckler's a must start this week. Marlon Mack against the Raiders, definitely plugging him into my lineups. The Texans, just please play Duke Johnson. Jeez, Pete, they keep rolling out Carlos Hyde, which is just the worst. Duke Johnson is just so superior to Carlos Hyde. And I understand that Duke Johnson may not be capable of, handling like 20 or 25 carries, but, just give the ball to Duke Johnson, please. The Chiefs, it'll be interesting to see what their running back situation looks like. I mean, McCoy looked pretty good last week. Darrell Williams looked good last week. I think you can probably say that Damian Williams, his fantasy stock has taken a huge hit. I mean, he's probably going to be a flex play at best moving forward. The Lions are another one. It's like, give Kerryon Johnson the ball. Please give Kerryon Johnson the ball. I mean, I think he's a top 10 running back, but it seems like they want to screw around and get Ty Johnson involved. Mark Ingram is another guy with the Ravens. A tough matchup this week, but if you have him, you're starting him, because his red zone usage is out of control, and in that offense, he's going to get his touches. So, Mark Ingram, you got to start him. I mean, flipping to the other side of that, you got to start Nick Chubb. It's not something you want to do, but the way you'd probably drafted Nick Chubb, I mean, you're not going to sit Nick Chubb, even though he's going against the Ravens. The Patriots backfield, always hard to figure out what's going on there. James White should be back this week. He was kind of a surprise inactive. Right now, though, I would definitely prefer White and Burkhead over Sony Michel, but I would not panic if I was a Sony Michel owner. this is what tends to happen in New England. And at some point this year, Sony Michel is going to pop off and have, some of those games where he's getting 3 touchdowns and, 100 yards rushing, and he's going to go on a little tear, and you're going to be happy you have him. So I wouldn't panic on him. Some other teams, Dalvin Cook has a ridiculously tough matchup with the Bears this week, but again, you're not sitting him. Chris Carson was super disappointing last week. I had so much Chris Carson on DraftKings and FanDuel, and it just did not work out, and that's my own fault because I've got like this man crush on Chris Carson, and it just hasn't worked out. So far this year, and they keep giving him the ball, fortunately, but if he keeps fumbling the way he has, Rashad Penny's just going to eat into his carries. Alvin Kamara, huge game last week. Probably shouldn't be surprised. He was kind of like the contrarian running back play in daily fantasy, but from a season long perspective, Kamara is just so good, man. That guy is just so good. He does it all. Just an absolute find for the Saints in the 3rd round out of Tennessee. Just what a stud. Zeke rounding into form, and I know Tony Pollard, outperformed him or whatever. There are people taking their victory lap on Twitter about, running back doesn't matter, and it probably doesn't. But, Zeke is going to get 25 carries or 25 touches, not carries, 25 touches or more in games like the one he's going to play this week. So, I'm rolling Zeke as much as I can. And then the Steelers' backfield, it's a train wreck right now. James Conner is a disaster. He's unusable. This is probably as good of a matchup, though, as you're going to get against the Bengals on Monday night. So if you're a James Conner owner, I think, you got to roll him out one more time. They've got some soft matchups coming up. Didn't touch on Mason Rudolph, and I don't want to kind of switch gears too much here, but, Mason Rudolph looked okay on Sunday. It didn't set the world on fire. He did throw the touchdown passes, but, it took him a while to get into the groove, but, he kind of comes home on Monday night with a pretty cherry matchup. But the Steelers better figure it out because their season is going nowhere fast. 0-3 is really not people are accustomed to in Pittsburgh. And, there's starting to be some unrest there. If they lose to the Bengals Monday night, it is going to be a disaster in the city of Pittsburgh. So that'll be an interesting one to watch just to kind of see what happens there. But running back, it's just one of those positions, and you really got to scour the waiver wire from running back because just, with the injuries and things that pile up, these guys, you just got to be able to find their backups and see, who the guys are they're going to produce and if they're going to be capable of things like that. So, moving to wide receiver, this week, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, just massive performances. Keenan Allen is kind of on like this tear where he's getting like 15, 16, 17 targets a game. And just absolutely, racking up. Keenan Allen had one of the best games that you're ever going to see. 13 catches, 166 yards. 13 catches for 183 yards and the 2 touchdowns. Just an insane game. Just all the way around. He doesn't have like the highest ADOT in the world, but, he's just a guy that just catches everything that's thrown to him. So, Keenan Allen, just an absolute stud. Mike Evans had like the pop-off game that I think everybody was expecting at some point to happen. 15 targets. He led the league in air yards last week. It's not surprising. He just absolutely abused the Giants secondary. They were just, he was just beating guys off the line of scrimmage and just running wide open down the sideline. It was just too easy. I still am a favor of, Chris Godwin over him for season long. I think Godwin's a better player. I think his route tree is better right now. Evans kind of just runs straight down the field, and they try to get him on these long passes. But you're going to have these blow-up games from Mike Evans because that's kind of his thing. Tyler Lockett, he's another one, turned in a really, really good performance. 11 catches, 154 yards. Of course, the Seahawks were kind of chasing points the whole day, so they definitely got him involved. A lot. Brandon Cooks, another one. And these Ram receivers, man, like. Cooper Kupp is like their red zone guy, and I said at the beginning of the year that maybe Cooper Kupp could catch like 12 touchdown passes. So, he caught the 2 TDs the other night, but it's hard to pin down which one of these Rams receivers is going to have like a blow-up game. Because Cooks will go like 8 for 12 this week and then come back next week and go like 3 for 47 or something like that. And you'll have Robert Woods catch 9 passes for 110 yards and a touchdown. I avoided mostly the Rams for the most part as far as their pass catchers go, just because I don't like playing that guessing game. It's kind of like the New England backfield. You just, one of them's going to hit every week. You just don't know which one. I just don't like playing roulette. So if you own Brandon Cooks, you're going to start him, but it's just tough to determine whether or not he's going to be the one that hits that week, or if it's going to be Kupp or it's going to be Robert Woods. Moving down, just looking at some names and I'm on airyards.com when I look at a lot of this stuff, because air yards are a big predictor of future value too. Sterling Shepard 7 for 100 yards. I mean, that game in Tampa was just bananas. I mean, it was an absolute offensive explosion, and the offensive environment when teams play against Tampa is just crazy. So that's what I say about Daniel Jones. Like, he couldn't have had a more cherry matchup for his first week. And Shepard had a big game. Ingram had a big game. I mean, it was just the perfect storm for him. And I do think Daniel Jones is going to be really good, but, the matchup couldn't have been better. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he popped last week, 6 for 99 and a touchdown. He's another one. I mean, Devontae Adams, if you can go and, and the window might be closed after this week, because I really think Devontae Adams has a chance to blow up on Thursday night. But if you can go out, and if he doesn't blow up on Thursday night, go to the Devontae Adams owner and see what you can get him for, because he's not really had like a blow up game yet, and so if you can get him before he has that blow up game, that's what you want to try to do. Now, tomorrow night against the Eagles, he may come out and catch 11 balls for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's what he's capable of. And the Eagles defense is certainly not going to stop him from doing that. So, see what he does tomorrow night. But if he doesn't really flash, go to the Adams owner Friday morning or Saturday and say, hey, look, what's it going to take? What do you want for him? But again, when you look at some of the passing games here and some of the matchups, this week, I mean, I like Julio a lot this week. Calvin Ridley, at home too. I mean, I think both of them are definitely in play. Terry McLaurin is in play for me, especially just looking at how bad, the Giants defense looked last week. Keenan Allen again, let's go back to the well, Dolphins, let's go back to the well. All over Keenan Allen this week. The Raiders offense, Tyrell Williams got kind of a garbage touchdown and it counted, but David Carr had like a bad day. But if you look at just the box score, like, it looks like a really good day. So, be wary of the Oakland offense. I don't know. I just don't like them going in Indianapolis. I just think that's a tough matchup, tougher than people think. Looks like T.Y. Hilton's banged up. He might be out. So, hopefully Paris Campbell can get it going, maybe Deion Kane. Probably look at some of the tight ends in that game too. Maybe they get Ebron going a little bit more. In Indianapolis, I think this week could be a big Will Fuller week. Just, Will Fuller, it just seems like he's ready to pop off at some point. It looks like he's just waiting on to have one of those big games he typically has. I think this could be a good Will Fuller week. Last week, Arizona against the Panthers, they just threw everything underneath. It was just so weird. Like, they didn't even try to go downfield. So I think the Texans will try to stretch the field a little bit with Fuller and maybe get him behind that secondary and maybe soften them up so Hopkins can kind of work underneath. With the Chiefs, again, any of those guys could be viable. I mean, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce. It just depends on who's going to get the work. I had a lot of Watkins last week in DFS, and it was just the wrong play. I should have. I mean, I looked at Hardman all week, and I just couldn't pull the trigger on him, and I should have because, he had the big touchdown catch. But, Mahomes is just awesome. And, Kelsey, again, he's another one he's just waiting to have, like, one of those big weeks where he catches, like, 10 passes for 150 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I don't know if this will be the week, but it's always in play. As long as Mahomes is a quarterback, it's always in play. Don't care for any of the Browns this week. That might be a mistake, but I'm going to play the numbers. Don't care for any of the Browns against the Ravens. I mean, Baker's been terrible for the most part. I mean, he's been really inconsistent. So I'm not a huge fan of the matchup either going into Baltimore. Patriots pass catchers. This could be an Edelman week. With James White coming back, that's probably less likely. Always a Josh Gordon fan. I think he's kind of waiting to have one of those breakout games. The Bills pass catchers, no thank you. The Patriots just seem to scheme guys, away from what they're good at. So no thank you to any of the Bills pass catchers. We've kind of touched on some of these other guys. I mean, like I said, I'd go back to Chris Godwin. Lockett, I think, is going to get more work. I mean, the Seahawks just traded, Nick Vannett to the Steelers. So I would say that Lockett has potential to get more work. On the Cardinals side of things, I mean, really tough matchup against Seattle. Not really ideal, even though, Christian Kirk's getting like 12 targets a game. And Larry Fitzgerald's just catching touchdown passes, but still just don't love the matchup there. Cowboys, I think Amari Cooper definitely he has potential for a blow-up game this week. It seems like the Saints, struggle against some one-wide receivers. So, definitely looking at Amari Cooper. And then, for the Steelers, I do think Juju's going to have a big game Monday night. It just seems like that's the type of game that he thrives in, and he kind of likes that stage. We touched a little bit on the tight ends. The only thing I'll say about tight end is, it's been such a wasteland of a position. You got Kelsey, you got Kittle, you got Ertz. Ertz is just such a tough start on a short week, but, you got to roll him out there. But the guy that I'm looking at is probably Will Disley for the Seahawks. He's caught a touchdown every game this year. When he's been on the field, he catches touchdown passes. So, at tight end, unless you drafted one of the big three, you're probably playing roulette. If you were lucky enough to get Evan Ingram and you kind of took that chance in the draft, I mean, he's been paying good dividends. So, keep starting him. I mean, he's just because there's nobody else. I think you got to keep rolling him out. And then, Mark Andrews, if he's healthy against the Browns, would be a good start for me. But tight end is just, it's one of those things where you've got to hope you stream right, and you got to hope you guess right, and you got to hope you get it right. So, from a fantasy perspective this week, the game totals are fairly low. We don't have very many games with a total north of 46. The way it stands right now, it looks like there's maybe 3 of those games on the slate this week. 4 or 5. 5 games right now with a total higher than 46, but a couple of those games, like the total is like right at 46. The highest total of right now, it looks like Giants Redskins, that one's almost at 50. Chiefs Lions is at 54, so you can expect some offense there. It looks like the Cardinals are always going to be a team where they've gotten a high implied total with whoever they're playing, 26. Chargers are tied. Well, no, I'm sorry. The Chiefs have the highest implied total on the slate with almost 31, but the Chargers are second at 30. But, that's more for DFS purposes. I would not make, game totals, like the end all be all, but it's definitely something to factor in. So, So that's pretty much the fantasy scoop for week 4. Just want to, as always, thank Josh for having me on. Like I said, you can catch some of my work on Dynasty Football Digest. The guys over there and IDP guys, .org and the owner/creator of the sites, Nate Cheat on Twitter. He is actually starting a t-shirt company where he's selling some fantasy football t-shirt. He has a really cool Gardner Minshew T-shirt that he just made. So, check them out at IDP Guys and then Dynasty Football Digest, and look those guys up on Twitter. We've got a lot of cool podcasts on there, so you guys can check that out. But again, I just want to thank Josh for having me on. Hope you guys have a good fantasy week, and we will see you for week 5 and sometime next week. But best of luck this week, guys. We'll be seeing you. Thanks.
The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, part of the Mayo Please podcast network, is sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you grab a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. And our new sponsor and fellow sports fans at PM Plus Reserves, providing reserve studies for homeowner and condominium associations in the Washington metropolitan area for the past 30 years. Make sure you check us out on all streaming platforms via the Mayo Please and the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also find the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, along with the Mayo Please on Twitter. Have any questions for the show? Feel free to shoot us an email at kirbyonsports@gmail.com.
All right, Thursday, September 19th, I'm Josh Kirby bringing you another segment of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. This one is a very special guest. Once again, I'm getting a lot of those on, but from Atlanta coming up to Washington, works at NBC4 covering sports for a couple years. I'm not sure how many years, but she's been there a while and she's doing a great job. Yes, it's Sherry Burris. Sherry, thanks so much for calling in today. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Josh.
Yes, ma'am. Let's get right into this. Well, I got to know how you got started in your career as a sports reporter and how you got to NBC4.
Yeah, it's funny. I, growing up, would watch the Today Show all the time. And I just turned to my mom. I was like, Mom, I want to be like Katie Couric. I thought I would want to do morning news. I found out I'm not a morning person, so scratch that off the list. And news is just, sometimes really depressing and sad and bad news. So I always loved sports, did sports. My family's involved in sports. So it was kind of a natural transition to want to do sports broadcasting. Went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, majoring in the PR stratcom side as well as reporting, and just fell in love with being on camera and knew that's what I wanted to do. So I got my first TV job in Columbia, Missouri, at a TV station there, ironically doing news first. Told the news director I wanted to do more sports. Couple months later, got to move to the sports department, was there for about 3 years in Columbia. From there, I was lucky enough to jump all the way to Atlanta, Georgia, where I was there for almost 2 years. My main focus was the Georgia Bulldogs. Love me some Athens, man. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. And then from there, I came here to Washington, D.C., and it's been about 2.5 years. Absolutely love DC. The people are wonderful. The sports teams are great to cover. A lot of good athletes in town, and have met a lot of really awesome people. So here I am at WRC, and small world. Katie Couric used to work here. So life just sometimes just comes full circle at you.
Yeah, very great stuff there. And as you know, she is on News 4, NBC4 Washington. You can catch her doing the news on there along with appearances on field, but we'll get into that later. So tell us a little bit about NBC4, how you like it down there, and basically give the listeners a behind the scenes look at what you do on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, so when it's an anchor day, or I guess when I'm in studio, I come in and it's cool. They have all the anchors' pictures on the walls. One side is the NBC4 local side. The other side is the network anchor. So I walk in, they still have Jim Vance's photo on the wall. He's the first one. So I make sure to say hi to Jim every day when I come into the studio or into the station. And I walk in, we go to the sports office. I have 2 wonderful producers I work with. And we, sort of sift through what's happening in the day, the biggest storylines. And then I go in and get my makeup done. We have a wonderful makeup artist, Nikki Lemon, and she makes sure we're all looking good. Go back to the sports office, write scripts, keep track of news on social media. And then we do sports at 6:50. And then I come home for dinner, watch the games that are on, whether that's baseball, basketball, hockey, and then go back after dinner. We do the 11 o'clock news, and I come home. Is, I guess, a normal anchor day, but things are way more hectic, as you can imagine, when it comes to like covering a Redskins Sunday or like a Caps playoff game.
Yes, please go into what the difference is between an anchor day is and covering a Redskins or a Caps game, something like that. What differs throughout the day?
Yeah, so the biggest difference is we don't go in studio at all for those days. It's all pre-planned before we get there. For a Redskins game, like a 1 o'clock kickoff, I try to get to the stadium at 11 a.m. Gives me time to put my bag down, get my laptop out. I like to make sure I'm like roaming the sidelines to see the players, any other media, just kind of, get a feel for the game before it starts. And then once the game actually kicks off, I make sure I take notes of everything that's happening. So after the game, my photographer and we have great photographers as well. I know I gave a shout out to our producers. We work with 3 photographers, sometimes 2 or 3 photographers on a game day that shoots the game. Afterwards, we go in the locker room, ask questions about, the biggest storylines. And then we sift back through all of it and pick out our top storylines and turn a 3-minute package, as it's called, a 3-minute story on the biggest storylines for our Redskins final show. So it's pretty crazy running around. I probably end around 7:30 or 8. So it's kind of a longer day for football. When it comes to Caps, it is a much longer, busier day, but you're just running nonstop. We go to morning skate, go back after that doing some interviews. Then I go have lunch. I get ready. We do live shots at 4, 5, and 6. Then we do the game. Then post-game, we go in the locker room. And then within a matter of minutes, we are on the bench doing a live shot at the top of News 4 at 11. And then we still have to do another story for the morning show to make sure that those folks get content and know what's happening in the world. So those are like 10 a.m. to about midnight days for Caps playoffs. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. It is amazing. It is adrenaline filled. I drink at least 2 cups of coffee. It's a blast, particularly when they win. So they're good days. They're just very long days.
Yeah, I can't believe you do that much. We only see so much behind a camera, but you're doing so much to produce that content. And for the viewers who don't know, I actually met Sherry at a morning skate. She took the time after talking with Joe Beninati, the voice of the Washington Capitals, and we talked for a solid 30 minutes. And I was like, man, this girl would be great on my podcast, and now I have you on my podcast.
I'm so thankful to be here, Josh. I'm so glad we were able to connect.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So moving right along, we got a little bit a look at what you do, but let's go into some sports news, if you will, because that's why we're here. This is a sports podcast. So what are your thoughts from a media standpoint over the past couple of weeks of the Redskins, starting off 0-2 with losses to the Eagles and the Cowboys? They're playing the Bears on Monday night. Then they play the Giants, then the Patriots week 5. So give us a rundown, Sherry. What was it like covering training camp? What was the mood for training camp and going out into the first 2 games of the season for this Redskins team?
Training camp was awesome. It was very hot in Richmond, but getting to know all the players, the rookies, some of the new guys like Landon Collins, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, even John Bostic. I mean, there's a lot, Case Keenum. There's a lot of new faces along with some of those other guys that we're used to seeing. So that was really cool to get to know all of them. And as you could imagine, in Richmond, it was optimism. I mean, everyone was feeling good, feeling confident. There obviously was a lot of debate if it should be Colt McCoy or Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, their, rookie pick. So that was, keeping us on our toes. Jay not letting us know till week 3 of preseason that it would be Case Keenum, particularly that Colt McCoy is still coming back from injury. So at least that settled that one. But that was, as we now know, just kind of the tip of the drama iceberg. Now that Trent Williams is still not here, which was obviously a brewing storyline, and still is. And I think when we looked at the schedule when it first came out, we all thought, wow, that's a really tough, chunk of games right off the top. I mean, Philly is not an easy place to play. Dallas at home is their biggest rival, so there's a lot of juice in that game, and that's just week 2. Then you have this primetime Monday game where the Redskins 1-8 on Mondays since 2014. So yowza, that's not good. Then another division opponent in the the Giants. And then obviously, the mega squad of the Patriots. That is asking a lot of your squad right out the gate. So we knew it was going to be tough. I think they knew it was going to be tough. And I think the hardest part about the frustration is that the Redskins come out first and they score first in those first 2 games, and they kind of build you up a little bit. You're like, all right, yeah, they can hang. This is going to be okay. And then halftime comes along, and then you kind of hold your breath, and you just feel the wind out of your sails because the other team gets back in it, and then they've lost those first 2. So I don't know what needs to happen Monday against the Bears to make sure that does not happen again, because the Bears have a pretty good defense also. So the Redskins certainly have their work cut out for them. But as I said, at first half, we've seen they can do it. They can do good things. It's just a matter of replicating that first half in the second.
That you put that perfectly. I mean, I don't understand either. I'm just a guy who covers sports in his free time. I still can't get it. And their Monday night record is pretty bad. So I'm hoping that will change, but it's tough. But it's still great covering this, but great stuff on that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to backtrack a little back to training camp. So was it different for you in training camp since you had to cover the team with NBC4 plus do sideline appearances during their preseason games?
It just was more hectic. That first game at Cleveland, I felt like a duck on a pond that I hope it looked all calm and smooth. But under the water, oh man, my feet were churning. I was just like, woo! Having to do live shots at 4, 5, 6, and then immediately going to the Redskins broadcast at 7, then, having to do a live post-game show from 10:30 to about 11, somewhere in that window, to then do the 11 o'clock news. I was not mentally prepared for how much that was going to be. I had to get all my, ducks in a row. It was hectic, but I think it helps me sidelining and getting to know the players in this team more by sidelining, helping in the post-game shows. So I'm thankful for that. But eventually I was able to get my workflow. Eventually it got pretty seamless and pretty smooth. So that was fine. But no, I mean, it was really, I think it actually helped me sidelining, get to know these guys better and this team better, because I was then, that became more of my job, that I need to know this team inside and out, rookies, vets, the whole thing, not just the main storylines. I would say that I knew in the past, not being down on the sideline.
Yeah, that's really great. And I remember you mentioning you host the Redskins final show. I believe that's what you said it was called. Is that an in-studio thing after the game, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so Redskins final is after News 4 at 11 on Sundays, or I guess News 4 after the game on Sunday Night Football. So it's a 30-minute show. I typically just do the pre-recorded stories for that because we're at the games on Sundays. But this coming Sunday, since it's a Monday night game, I'll be in studio. We do all the highlights. It'll be a little different because we won't have the Redskins in it. But, looking ahead to that Redskins Monday game, still doing one-on-one interviews. We'll still be in there. So, yeah, that's an in-studio show that Dave Johnson or Carrie Chow will host if I'm at a game. But it kind of just puts a bow on your Sunday after Sunday Night Football, giving you the storylines for Redskins and just kind of see what happened around the league on a Sunday night.
Hey, by the way, that is my man, Dave Johnson. I can't thank him enough for all that support he's given me on this podcast. He's a really great man. So
he is. He's the hardest working man in DC, I think.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like four jobs: DC United, Washington Wizards, WTOP, and News 4. That's hard work.
It is. He does an excellent job.
Yeah. So moving right along, going back to this Trent Williams situation, I saw the one-on-one interview you had with Redskins president Bruce Allen. What were your takeaways about that? What he said about Trent Williams?
It was his confidence that Trent would be back as a Redskin. I think, there's a lot of speculation that Trent will not come back per, other reports that have been floating around now for a couple weeks, couple months, that he's allegedly upset with the medical staff and a contract situation. So when asking Bruce, he said, yeah, Trent's going to play football again. And my mind immediately went, oh, like, are you addressing, maybe trade rumors? But I asked him and he said, no, as a Washington Redskin. And, obviously you got to take all these other reports with a grain of salt because we haven't heard from Trent. But I thought it was interesting how confident Bruce was in thinking he'd suit up in the burgundy and gold again.
That's a very great point. And still no word from Trent Williams. Am I correct?
Correct. We've only seen some posts on social media, a private jet for his birthday a couple months ago, and then also another picture of him and some friends outside of the private plane with some mountains in the background. No geotag. We have no idea where he is, but based off of the few little nuggets he's given us on social media, he seems to be doing okay.
He seems to be doing okay, but he's getting fined for like every game he's missed or something. So
yeah, he's missing out on a lot of money. So I'm sure that might play a factor at some point this season.
I don't know. So how do you like the up and comings for the Washington Redskins in Terry McLaurin and Cole Holcomb on the defensive side of the football? Two guys I think they have a lot of future with the team. What have you seen out of those two guys that during Redskins camp in the first two games?
Starting with Terry, it kind of breaks my heart that he's an Ohio State alum. He's a Buckeye, being a Badger here, but I like him so much. He is such a great guy, always a delight to talk to, very insightful, great player. We see he has good hands. I was eager to see him in the regular season because he didn't get many reps in the preseason, which then also sort of tells you how crucial he was. I think for Jay to not, put him in harm's way in any capacity, almost kind of not even want to like tip off the other teams what a gem he could be. Obviously those two touchdowns in the first two games is a testament to his skill. So I really enjoyed Terry. I think, the sky's the limit for him. Vernon Davis this summer was saying that he even has this like aura of a vet. Like he's been around for a while. He was picking the brains of Vernon Davis, DRC, on just how to play this game for a long time, which as a rookie just goes to show where his mind is at already. So Redskin fans, embrace him, love him. He's going to be around for a while, hopefully, because he could really do great things. And then for Cole Holcomb, total bookworm. Jay discovered him actually at a UNC watching tape and went to the defense and was like, hey, you need to look at this guy. Because I'm sure I don't know if you can name a couple guys from defense from UNC off the top of your head. They're kind of far and few between. You think of like SEC and Alabama. So for Cole to kind of, be a draft pick from UNC on that side of the ball says a lot that he caught Jay's attention. He told me, studying is going to be his biggest strength. And if you look at, these other games, these first two, you look at the game log, and Cole Holcomb is, making tackles and in on those big plays. And I think he really shows a lot of promise. And this defense, there's sort of this mentality that, like, if you don't play hard, you can't sit with us. Like, if you're not playing to 150% every day, you're not going to play. So you have to bring your A game. And to be a rookie and being able to be embraced and be used as he is, that right there says a lot about him.
Indeed, that was a great overlook on Terry McLaurin and Cole Holcomb. What are your thoughts now on Case Keenum being the starter over Colt McCoy and Dwayne Haskins this season?
So I believe that it is with the best interest to not start Dwayne Haskins. I guess the best way I kind of feel about it is that we have this society of like instant gratification. You scroll on Twitter and your news is immediately there. You draft a quarterback 15th overall and you immediately want to play with your new shiny toy. No. Put him on the shelf. Let him gain some value. Let him learn. Do not play Dwayne Haskins yet. It is so unfortunate that Cole is still coming back from this injury because it pretty much was his job to have, except he's still coming back from this leg injury. So my heart goes to Colt that he's not the starter. But I feel like even from training camp, it just seemed like Case was going – I thought it was going to be Case from the beginning. He has the most experience as a starter. I mean, Colt's been in the system longer, but Case has been a longer starting quarterback. So he has those reps. He was one game away from the Super Bowl. I mean, I still get goosebumps when I think of him doing that skull clap in Minnesota, and the camera just pulls out, and the entire arena's doing it. I mean, he has this great aura about him when I would see him with his teammates, the running backs coming over, high-fiving every single guy. He has it. It's just a matter of now needing to piece this thing together. We just had media availability with Case yesterday, and you could sort of sense there's kind of this budding frustration that he's having to answer the same questions of like, 0-2, are you freaking out? What about the run game? What about the pass game? I think he is just ready to go out there and finally win a game as a Redskin. Stop answering all these questions of, shoulda, coulda, woulda, not winning a game. So I think things will get easier for him once they kind of crack this code and win a game, and then they can keep building off of that.
Yeah. So that's about all I have for the Redskins, unless you have any last thoughts before we move on to the next team.
No, I mean, I think we covered most of it. It's just, I'm sure I don't need to tell Redskins fans, but it's a work in progress this season.
Indeed. Yeah. So, moving on from the Redskins, once again, Sherry, thank you so much for all your in-depth analysis on that. We're going to move on to the Capitals. And Sherry, if I'm correct, you were at that Caps game last night, probably one of the best preseason games I've ever seen. Nicholas Backstrom just lobs it to the goal and it goes in from center ice. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, these first two preseason games have been very close for preseason.
Yeah.
And the ending to that, I mean, it's like, wow, he actually did that in the second preseason game.
Yeah, like I was, sitting there with my husband, and he's a St. Louis Blues fan, so he was, bummed that they even tied the game. The Caps tied the game, but I was like, all right, well, here we go, overtime in preseason again. And then, I turn and look, and Backy finds the back of the net, and I was like, all right, guess we're going home. Way to step up, Nikki. So they looked good, and I mean, as you said, this was a mega lineup between the teams that kick off the NHL season. The two reigning Stanley Cup champions. You can't really get much better than that. Binnington was out there, Vladimir Tarasenko, Alex Ovechkin playing in his first preseason game. So once I saw the lineups, and my husband, as I said, being from St. Louis, I was like, hey, we should probably go to this game. This is probably as close as, we can get to real hockey before October 2nd.
Well, yeah, before we get into more of the Capitals, that was great stuff, but I have to get this straight. Are you a Caps fan or a Blues fan? Because it has been seen on your Instagram you wearing a St. Louis Blues shirt when they won the Stanley Cup.
Correct. So, love makes you do crazy things. So my allegiance, obviously being a media member, I don't, when I'm working, root for a team. Obviously, it makes my job much easier when they win and more enjoyable. But covering these guys as long as I have, I've really grown to love hockey thanks to the Caps. So, I enjoy when they win. If I'm not working, I do root for the Caps. But since the Caps were out last year and via marriage, happy spouse, happy house is what I'm reminded. I was rooting for the Blues to win the Cup last year, as I think everyone except Boston fans were. And I thought, I think I saw a lot of similarities in the Blues winning the Cup last year than when the Caps won the Cup the year prior. So if it's not Caps Blues, I will root for Caps as a fan. I will root for Blues as a fan. But I try to stay neutral if it's Caps and Blues because I don't want to upset anybody.
Yeah, so we got that out of the air, and I'm sure I'm sure your husband was very happy when you had that Twitter post of you watching the Caps game during your wedding, and they actually won during that Stanley Cup run.
Yes, he was more surprised, I think, that I was, so into it since he's the more diehard hockey fan. But, it's such a small world. We got to cover the Caps winning the Cup when we got married. And then this past year, our 1-year anniversary, my present to him was a one-way ticket to St. Louis. So he could be in St. Louis as long as it took for him to watch them win the Cup, which in turn they did. So I don't know what we're going to do for our second anniversary. It's kind of hard to top 2 Stanley Cups in 2 years.
Well, that's pretty crazy. So enough with that. Let's actually get into the sports talk. Let's start with Caps Media Day. Yeah, I know you were there. What was the atmosphere from the players and coaches after last year getting exited in the first round by the Carolina Hurricanes?
They are antsy to get back out there and try this again. I compare it to like baking cookies. I think when they won the Cup, they found the recipe for success. They made the perfect chocolate chip cookie. Then this past year, they still had that recipe, but they realized they were missing some ingredients. She's getting hurt, breaking his collarbone against Carolina. They didn't have Michael Kempney because he was already hurt. They were just missing a few things. They weren't getting the same kind of bounces that they did. It's, winning in hockey, as much skill as it takes, it also takes some luck and some favor, so it just didn't work this year. So from their locker clean out, it didn't feel the same as years prior when they didn't win it. Obviously they were upset, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, like again, we couldn't do it. It was a much more positive, hey, you know what? We couldn't get it done this year. That's, this is it. We're going to take this and move it forward. So fast forward to media day, it's like, okay, summer was way too long. Let's get out there. Let's do this thing. Osh said he's feeling great. We've seen Kempney out there at, preseason skates and training camp. And they have, the guys all back. So it's like, let's go. Let's do this thing. Like, I want to get out there and play hockey. So I am very eager to see how this kind of all comes together.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about hockey was a game of I forget exactly what you said. You said it a couple moments ago, but you said hockey was a game of luck and skill, sort of like chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about that game 7 game-winning goal by Justin Williams. That was a lot of that.
Oh my goodness, I was pacing back and forth. It's like you're just waiting for that breaking moment almost, just like you hold your breath through each overtime. And then it's almost just seeming like the Caps were just so gassed in that moment. And, it was just kind of a weird bouncing puck that got past Holt. And you just felt the whole place just like, ugh, that game 7, bad luck again for the Caps at home, been there, done that. It was that kind of moment. And it was kind of unbelievable that, coming off the cup, that it would even go to 7 against Carolina. But, all those top teams kind of got eliminated early. Like, who would have guessed Tampa Bay would get swept in the first round? I mean, that was insane.
Yep.
In Pittsburgh, no one could have predicted that. So this was just kind of the year of the underdog this past season. It's, that's why you play the game, though. You never know who's going to win. If you go in each game saying, oh, the favorite team, the team that should win, wins, well, there's no fun in that. So that's just kind of what that was. And, I mean, good for Justin, that he really was able to take that Carolina team and turn it into something. He's taking the first half of the season off. He's taking a little break, which, we did a media skate. The Caps held a media skate. And let me tell you, those guys make it look so easy. It is not. I don't know if anyone out there has tried hockey. I highly recommend it because it gives you a whole new perspective on how hard it is to skate, shoot, get back. I mean, they make it look way too easy. So kudos to those guys. They make it, they're so graceful. But it's a hard game, and it takes a lot to win hockey games, particularly at this level. Everyone is really good.
Yeah, that was my next question. Your media day skate. I heard you actually had some sort of goal there. They put some tape on the side of the puck and gave you your first ever goal. How did that feel?
Well, I didn't even know I scored, to be honest with you. I thought I had an assist, so I was over the moon to be involved in a goal. But it just kind of was a bouncing puck, went right past the goalie, and I scored. It was pretty cool. Like I said, it is hard. It is not easy. So that was pretty cool. So we have a lot of built-ins in our apartment. So I have a whole little cubby of Caps championship stuff, and my first goal puck is sitting right above it.
Yeah, so well, you didn't have to drop the gloves or anything, no fights or anything during that media.
No,
skate,
I was
right?
not looking like Tom Wilson or Alex Ovechkin out there dropping the gloves, trying to get into anything.
Oh yeah, Alex Ovechkin, you don't want to mess with him. So
no.
yeah. Any any predictions for the season for the Capitals this upcoming regular season? What are your thoughts on how they will do?
I'm anticipating another at least first, second round playoff appearance. Obviously, we know with Barry Trotz now in New York, he's done amazing things with that team. So the division is, going to be difficult again this year, particularly a second year under Trotz. So the Islanders are going to be buying in even more. So I expect the Metro to still be really deep. But I mean, it's a long season. There's going to be some ups. There's going to be some downs. Do not hit the panic button. Hopefully, there'll be some moments where, we can look back in April, May, and be like, oh, remember that blank, and be able to laugh things off. So that's, if I learned anything from this team, from this game, you got to kind of take each one with a grain of salt and not, be too invested in each game because it's a long season. And as we saw, and Caps fans know, you can be the best team in the league and be sitting at home watching the second round, third round. So kind of just buckle up, sit down, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Yes, indeed. You just got to enjoy the ride, like you said, and you never know. So, that's hockey and the Capitals for you. Moving right along, I want to talk some Washington Nationals. They're fighting their way for a wild card spot. I'm not sure if you have covered much of the Nationals this year, Sherry, but if you have, tell us a little bit about what that was like and how the team is doing so far, pushing for this wild card spot.
We've been to a couple Nats games. It's crazy. If you think back to April, May, I was like, no way are we having postseason baseball in DC. And then they became the best team in baseball over the summer, this surge, which if you go in the clubhouse, it seemed to change when Gerardo Parra came in. He just completely changed the culture in that room. I mean, they're dancing in the club. Could you imagine if I told you back in April, Anthony Rendon and Steven Strasburg are going to dance in the dugout? No way would I have thought that. So the fact that he's been able to like have them inspire the team to be more themselves and to play with, they're like genuinely having fun doing this. It's totally made a change. If anyone has been to a home Nats game when Parra is up and Baby Shark plays, it is insane. I've never seen anything like it, to have that many humans do the Baby Shark thing. It is a sight to behold. It is fantastic. And I think that surge that he's brought in is what sort of propelled them to this moment. Now they've stumbled a bit. That I think at one point they had a five game lead in the wild card standings. Now it's down to about a game and a half. I need to double check if the Cubs won last night.
I think 1.5 going into the day as we are recording this podcast.
Yeah, so it's dwindled down, but on the flip side, it's kind of like the Caps. The Nats have been the best team in the NL East for how many years previously, and then they can't win because they kind of coasted the last couple weeks of baseball. So maybe there's a little something to be said. If they're going through adversity now, they're learning how to come back in games, play in close games. This could be, really good preparation for a play-in wild card game, or a best of 5 series when you need to really kind of put your head down, nose to the grind, and play this thing out. So we'll have to see. But it's been a wild ride with the Nats. I think that can be said for every DC sports team, that it's always a wild ride. But we're going to, I think this team, if they can hang on these last 2 weeks, I'm very eager to see what this wild card game can do, because I know these fans really are hungry for a postseason for October for baseball for the Nats.
Yeah, most definitely. It has been a wild ride for the Nationals, and I'm looking forward to seeing how DC will react to them getting that wild card spot. But the wild card game, as you know, a 1-game playoff, that will be a nail biter.
Yes. I remember that Game 5 here a couple years ago, and, the energy was incredible. So I know last time we were in the clubhouse, they were saying, like, fans, please, like, we need you. We know what it's like when we play on the road, and we want to be able to make it a hard atmosphere at Nationals Park. So come be loud. Those guys also are hungry for support just as much as the fans are for them to do well.
And last but not least, we have the Washington Wizards, who really struggled this season, got a new GM, and I heard a very interesting stat. They had 25 different players in and out of that locker room last season. Not sure how much you've covered the Washington Wizards, Sherry, but with their new draft pick in Roy, what are your thoughts on the season to come for the Washington Wizards?
I don't want to call it a rebuilding year, but I would say, again, just kind of be patient with them. As you said, a new GM. I don't think I even realized it was that much of a revolving door to their locker room with how many players they had. But with John still out, this team isn't going to look the same. Obviously, Bradley Beal is playing at an elite all-star level, and it's been really fun to see him come into his own and kind of just take this team and make it his. But I'd say also with Rui Hachimura, he's been incredible to work with, at least early on. It's funny, I was watching NCAA tournament, and I saw a story on him, and my husband and I looked at each other, and we were like, wow, if this kid really can play at the next level, he'd be great for DC. Just, the fact that he's international, and DC is such an international city. And if he really can play, I think the fans will really embrace him. But he is so nice, so gracious. The coaches rave about him that he's very coachable. Like, he asks questions on how to, get better and further explain things if he doesn't understand. So the fact that they have someone coming in that really does want to be here, be coached up, get better is exactly what this team, I think, needs, because they are going to be so young. And then Isaiah Thomas, I was so excited to have him come in. I remember his game against the Wizards when his sister passed away in that car accident, and he just went off. Emotional game for him. I know he's been a thorn in a lot of team sides over the past couple of years when he was still really elite. So I was excited for him to come in, and then we just find out that he's had thumb surgery. So he's going to be out a couple weeks. So that's kind of a bummer. But I think if this team can gel, maybe by November, December, they can really take shape. But as we saw, the East is pretty difficult. So I'm not so sure I'm sold on playoffs for the Wizards this year. But I think there's going to be some good, bright moments with some of these guys on the roster currently.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas out 6 to 8 weeks with thumb surgery. So that's pretty tough with the thumb, but you need it to play basketball. So, yeah, I think that's it. We covered all 4 teams, unless you have any other teams you'd like to talk to our listeners about that you cover.
Mystics.
Yes,
Elena Deladon, EDD, MVP.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Nobody covers the Washington Mystics. Heck, I don't even know what channel they play on. I am sorry for that, but if I watched more games, I'd cover them. Apparently, they are grinding away. They're in the playoffs, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but
yes. As of today's game 2 of their series with the Aces. So they won the first one. It was a close game. So they've been doing really well. Elena Deladon, Christy Tolliver, Emma Miesemann. These girls are the real deal. They're trying to get back to the WNBA finals. And, I mean, again, it's been a grind against the Aces, but they're looking good.
Yeah, which they were actually in last year, the finals, but lost. So with a knee injury from EDD, if I'm correct. I haven't watched that much, but I have followed on Twitter. But definitely a team you got to look out for is the Washington Mystics. And funny story, Christy Tolliver actually coaches for the Washington Wizards in the offseason.
She does. Yeah, she you see her on the bench there during games. So it's great that you can have a player also, in the WNBA, get involved with the NBA. So I enjoy seeing her working with those guys.
Yeah, so best of luck to the Washington Mystics, but I think we've covered it all, Sherry. And unfortunately that's about the end of our segment. So any last words for our fans or viewers, Sherry?
No, I just want to say, thanks for watching. Thanks for having me on. It's been incredible being here as long as we have already, and we're looking forward to the fall and seeing what, these teams can do.
Yes, I do appreciate that. And I'm very glad that you were able to come on the show. As our listeners have heard earlier, I did meet Sherry at a pregame skate, and once again met her at another morning skate before game one of the Stanley Cup final. And a funny story with that, she actually came out. I got a selfie with her right as Ovechkin was walking out. So that was really crazy. I saw Ovechkin and I saw one of my favorite sports reporters that day as well.
If only we could have gotten Ovi in the selfie with us.
I wish he did too, but anyways, that wraps up our segment. Sherry, thanks so much for coming on the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You're always welcome on whenever you want. And that wraps it up. Sherry, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, Josh Kirby and Dan Dembski back with you. Thanks to Sherry Burris for calling in to the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast once again. It was really great having an interview with her, and I really hope you all enjoyed that segment. And thanks again to Jason Kamlowski for another edition of Fantasy Football Files. Dan, wrapping up the podcast with a Week 4 NFL preview. Starting on Thursday night, the Philadelphia Eagles going to Green Bay. That's going to be a really tough matchup there. Then 1 o'clock, Washington faces another division opponent against the New York Giants at 1 o'clock. Tennessee plays Atlanta. Cleveland and Baltimore, that's a game you talked about, Dan. And a game I think Buffalo could give New England a run for their money this week. They are in Buffalo. Then Kansas City playing Detroit. Carolina playing Houston. Oakland playing Indianapolis. Los Angeles Chargers against the Miami Dolphins. Going into the 4:05 game, Seattle playing Arizona. Tampa Bay playing the Los Angeles Rams. The 4:25 slot games, Minnesota playing Chicago, Jacksonville playing Denver, and the Sunday night game, Dallas playing New Orleans. That might be a tough matchup with Teddy Bridgewater. And Monday night, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh with the San Francisco 49ers and the New York Jets with bye weeks. Week 4, Dan, any predictions before we end the podcast?
Any predictions? Oh man, you went through them so quick. That was a blazing speed, Josh. I do think the Giants can beat the Redskins. I think that's a game that's very feasible.
You think? You think?
You never know, man. Division games are weird.
98.9% that the Giants win.
Oh, that doesn't mean anything. Those percentages are weird or stupid. Steelers and Bengals, that's a pretty intriguing game. I probably see the Steelers coming up on top of that one. I think Mason Rudolph plays well in that game. And I guess I'll make a prediction for our game. I think we can take the Browns since we're at home, and they really have not played well so far this year on offense. We've got a pretty good shot to win that football game. So that's all I have, really. And I've talked a lot tonight, and you've been listening to me and been very patient. So you're the man.
Yeah, I think Buffalo gives New England a run for their money. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but they give New England a run. I feel like New Orleans, if they're playing at home, gives Dallas a run with Teddy Bridgewater. And Cincinnati, I think they get their first win over Pittsburgh. It's going to be a sloppy division game, but I think Cincinnati gets their first win. So that's that's sort of my predictions there. But week 4, I can't wait. You probably can't either. And that wraps up the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. Dan, thanks once again for coming on the show. Any last words for our listeners?
Thanks again for having me, Josh, and stay thirsty, my friends.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. Thank you, and once again, good congratulations and good luck on your gig with ESPN Blacksburg. So that wraps up Yeah, man. Anytime. So that wraps up this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. As always, we're brought to you by the Mayo Please podcast network. And we're sponsored by Rat 11 Chips, PM Plus Reserves. Thanks to them for sponsoring the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. And as always, thank you to Dave Johnson, MPT Now Productions, and JR Beats Official. You can find us on all streaming platforms via the Mayo Please and the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So till next time, we say so long and peace out, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Have a good night.